Greetings, everyone. And welcome to an even cultier edition of Monster Party.
Monster Party!
Monster
It's cultish. It's funky. It's weird.
What is this?
Unusual.
I didn't know this movie existed. Maybe
I
it
can't
shouldn't.
explain this.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
This one's going to be fun. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh really?
Love this
Yeah,
topic.
I have decreed it.
Well, okay. Well, speaking of fun, who are you,
I
sir?
am fun. I'm pure fun. I am Matt Weinhold.
I am SHAWN Sheridan.
I am Larry Strothe.
And I'm James Gonis.
And for this episode, we are returning to a past subject. Now, we've only done one of these
Yes.
so far. This will be the second. Okay?
That's right.
Are y'all following me here?
Yes.
There was one thing,
Yes.
and now there's going to be another.
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
we're all on board. Good.
Yes.
Now, what
It was-
this episode... Yes, James. I'm pleased.
It was an epic topic, and it's
Oh, yes.
Too much.
still an epic topic.
It's still,
and
yes,
there-
there will be many other volumes to come, I'm sure.
Yes, there will.
there-
And thank you for that, James.
and there is really only one guest that we would have on
Well,
for
But
this
before
topic.
we do that,
Hold your
before we
horses.
bring on the guest,
Just slow down, cowboy.
Mr. Jumping the
Just
gun
relax.
Uh-huh.
what the topic is for tonight is
Yes.
Revenge of the Killer Cult Films.
Killer
Ooh,
cult.
Cult
Ooh.
films. It's a revenge.
revenge.
Yeah, we're back and we're
Killer
mad.
cult
And I don't know
films.
why.
Back with a vengeance.
right.
Thank you, James. And James, you were saying something about a guest earlier.
Well, I mean,
You've intrigued me.
we had so much fun the first time on this, and
Did we?
it was so thrilled to have our guest back for this. He's written about film for a wide range of magazines, books, websites, including Films and Review, VIDEOSCOPE, PSYCHOTRONIC Video. He's been a staff writer for TV Guide and managing editor for the Movies on TV paperbacks.
Whoa.
He's written reviews and features for discdish.com, time.com. He edited the Motion Picture Guide Annual. And for 29 years, 29 years,
29 years.
he has produced and hosted the weekly cable program Media Funhouse,
Unbelievable.
which
Thank you.
Time Magazine's Richard Corliss called the most eclectic and useful movie show on TV. Guys,
Nice.
let's welcome back Ed Grant.
Ed Grant.
Hey, man.
Ed Grant.
I think you know some things about some movies and stuff.
Hey, well, thank you very
seem
much.
to know about some stuff.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I'm glad to be here. I actually was contacted by your viewers, at least listeners, excuse me, not viewers, and they were quite effusive in their love of your show, and they were
Oh,
happy
nice.
to see me. They knew
that's
me
great.
from my blog and my Funhouse,
Oh,
and they
wow.
were
Very
like,
cool.
"Oh, and you're on Monster Party," and they're monster kids. These were quite old monster kids, but then again, so am I. So
Nah,
I'm not going to
that's
make fun of. I'm making fun of no one's age because
Sure. No, we're all in the
Right,
same
of
boat
course.
here.
It's like,
Yeah.
I think
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
We got great fans. They really have good hearts.
one gent loved. He listened to the part where you added at the end what we said before the show began. He actually
Which
listened.
we'll be
'cause he
doing
started-
again.
He started quoting to me stuff, and I'm like, "Wow, yeah, you really listen to that show. You listen to the,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
you know,
No,
the minutiae. These guys
They-
are into the minutiae.
Oh,
They
yeah.
get right
No,
there. So
they savor every drop.
yeah,
That's
that was
right.
amazing. I wish we were talking about self-published books, and I'm like, that wasn't even about movies. Wow, this so you included it, which was funny. And then this guy listened to it and commented on it. I was very flattered. So,
That's
so
awesome.
thanks again. I'm glad to be back.
Well,
Well,
we're
cult
flattered.
films.
Okay, welcome back.
Cult films. Well,
Cult films.
I look, it's been a while. And I just want to go out on a limb here. Guys, can you tell me what makes
Oh,
a
gosh.
cult film?
Oh, geez.
Wow, that's a tough one. Well, one thing that sticks out for me is that it's kind of a hidden treasure.
Mhm.
A little
Yeah.
bit,
Something
yeah.
that maybe when it was first released, maybe didn't do that well or
Yeah.
kind of flew under the radar. And over the years, it's either gained a bigger audience,
Yeah.
or-
Something, yeah.
it's been re-examined,
It's something that's like not
or
necessarily
maybe it hasn't.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
But it's something that's not necessarily mainstream popular entertainment.
Right.
But that, it could still be very, become a hit, but it's just not your typical kind of like ordinary, everyday, film. And usually in the horror sci-fi genre, that is especially true.
Because there's so much. It's funny, but every time I look at a film reference book and then I add the movies that were made after that book was published, and I think about all the films I have yet to see. There's no end to it.
It is amazing. Yeah. I mean, look, I think our listeners know too, like how much the four of us know or have watched of this stuff, but there's always something that we find that wow, I never heard of that, or like I've never seen that, or it's
but
amazing.
Ed,
One of the interesting things, Danny Peary's series of books, it was 1, 2, 3, and he sort of took it in a weird direction because he started with El Topo, Eraserhead, Rocky Horror, the big ones.
All the obvious,
as you say, they were either in the early 70s, these films were either like Rocky Horror was a bomb at the box office, and then it became this massive hit, or things like El Topo where they're like, we can't sell this. There's no way to sell a trippy, Chilean Western, a guy who's making a trippy Western. So they just played it at colleges or played it at midnight showings. Then he started in the second and third book to play with the idea, and he included critical, like The Searcher's Vertigo, which was out of print at that time. You didn't see Vertigo. Then he got into like the idea in the third book. Yeah, exactly. He had like in the third book things like The Wizard of Oz. Could that be considered a cult movie? Well, it's the most popular movie of all time, but it actually has its own devoted cult. So he was sort of playing with the idea. So by the third book, he was taking the idea and moving it in different ways. So you can almost say like, people say to me like their favorite cult movies are something like Caddyshack or something. And I'm like, well, Caddyshack was really popular.
Yeah, that was a hit.
For them, it becomes a cult movie because younger people than me love Zoolander and know every line of Zoolander. Right. And they can do Zoolander quotes. So for them, that's the cult of Zoolander. It's really weird.
You're just true. Generations has a factor in it too.
It's really weird. Like I'm a David Bowie lunatic. And the thing is, there's an entire generation of young women who Labyrinth was their entry point for Bowie. So they love David Bowie's music, but they can discuss. Evan Rachel Wood was on a recent tribute on a streaming thing, a Bowie celebration of 75 years. And Evan Rachel Wood did like a 15 to 20 minute, they gave her a chunk of the show just to talk about her love of Labyrinth and to sing a song for her. And they had one of the Hensons there. And it was like, Jesus, I know this is popular, but I guess because of the demographic, they don't want the old farts to just talk about Ziggy Stardust or The Man Who Fell to Earth. They're like, hey, we got people who really love Bowie because he does 2 songs. Like literally Labyrinth for them is this magical Bowie moment. But
if you're in love with Bowie, you should be going to The Man Who Fell to Earth.
I agree. Totally. See, I'm older, so I'm more into that Bowie. But it's interesting because younger women, and this was mentioned at a thing I went to at the New School, did a tribute to him after he died that was free to attend. And they showed us, and little girls in the audience were laughing because one woman brought her children dressed as different iterations of Bowie. She came as like Ziggy. Her one child was the Thin White Duke. Her one child was Halloween Jack. It was really scary. But basically, they showed us how little girls found that he had a package. His genital area was enlarged in that film. I guess he's wearing like a jockstrap or a codpiece.
Wait, in Labyrinth?
In Labyrinth, if you look at it, and little girls look on it online, you'll find memes where people are looking at Bowie's package. Because I'm sort of straight or whatever, I was looking at Jennifer Connelly. She's underage, I know, whatever. But it's sort of this weird thing where little girls or young girls would go like, oh, he's really alien looking. I'm attracted to him.
Sure, yeah.
He's also got a very prominent genital package there. So it's sort of this.
Yeah.
Well, look, he does the juggling too with the silver balls.
Yes,
or that's the crystal ball thing. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
What is Labyrinth about though?
It's the little girl's brother gets stolen, and then everything else is it's Terry Jones.
It's like a changeling story. The goblins take the little boy and they go into another dimension or whatever. Yeah.
There's a big furry creature that keeps saying, "Oh, smells bad." Oh, I like that creature.
So
I've always had a little bit of a resistance to the Hensons.
I agree because it does kind of like children.
Because it takes me out of it. Yeah. I recognize it too much as a puppet. It's like Jedi. The minute all those puppets come in the first part of Jedi, I'm like, wow. Okay, I could take Yoda, but this is a little too much.
Matt, that's different. When you're bringing you're using Salacious Crumb, and he's too much like a
more
Muppet.
Of them. There were the band guys.
To me,
what's Salacious Crumb? Robert Crumb's brother. What is Salacious Crumb?
Yeah, but
what's that? I don't.
When you go into that world, the Labyrinth world and the Muppet creature world, it's like they're all these Muppet-esque creatures. So it's like that's part of the world, Matt.
I want to like it. I really do. Because so many
what have you got against Muppets?
I don't know. It doesn't really hit with me.
It depends on I think your age maybe and your attitude towards it. I do like I think Dark Crystal, the original Dark Crystal film, I did enjoy. I appreciated.
Yeah,
but it is very much aimed toward kids and has that Muppet feel to it.
Sean, there's dark stuff in that.
Hold on, Larry. I'm saying I like the movie. I'm saying also that the Dark Crystal series they did recently did an even better job, I thought, of creating the world because you now had technology. You had some CGI, but it was still kind of that puppet-like aspect to it, but just enough, and they had a little more budget, and it was better at creating a universe, I thought, than the original film did. I like both, though. But it's a matter of taste, yes.
I would argue there's a really amazing film. It's two films in one. There was the telefilm called Alice. It's Dream Child. Dream Child was based on a Dennis Potter teleplay where there's this. I don't think it is Ian Holm in the teleplay, but it's the story of Reverend Dodgson and how he liked little girls but would never approach them. He never did put hands on them, but he loved them in this kind of weird spiritual and maybe fucked up more way. But then they added all the Muppets, and the actual movie still retains the poignance because Dennis Potter wrote the screenplay of the original teleplay. So it is weird. You're right. It's a little clashing. But for me, that worked because it's always when he's reading to the girls and then we're in Muppet
You're
Land.
escaping into,
And we still were in a more adult perspective because then we begin to think about, Alice in Wonderland has so many allegories and codes.
Yeah.
Actually, that will fit in with one of the first movies I'm going to do. It's an Alice in Wonderland archetype. There's so much adult stuff in Alice in Wonderland that when you see the Muppets, that still doesn't take you away from the Ian Holm, this man, this reverend pining for these girls and writing these crazy allegories that adults can enjoy, but that are his, he can read to the girls and that way he gets to be alone with little girls and stuff. So it's a very complicated film where the Muppets sort of serve as the, maybe the light, whatever that phrase is, like the lanyap. I can't pronounce that word.
Just to be clear, they're not the Muppets.
Right.
They're not, it's not Fozzie Bear. And
That would break the continuity. Yeah, that would break the mood completely if you had
Fozzie Bear's on Grindr, obviously.
Right.
What you mean from the creators of the Muppets. And these are Muppet-esque, or they're done by the same people.
They're the ones that used to be on Saturday Night Live would be the adult ones. They'd compliment Gilda Radner on her niche. They'd make breast jokes.
Ralph was always on there.
Right.
All right, well,
so
let's go into our...
You want to get us started?
I will start, actually, and that is great because Alice in Wonderland, I didn't even mean to do that, but since we're talking about Muppets, this has nothing to do with Muppets, but it has to do with Alice in Wonderland. I do on my show, I introduce it as, the best, everything from high art to low trash and back again. I have to say that just to introduce. So my choices will bounce back and forth. The first one is fully in the land of high art, but I don't want anyone to get scared from it because it's, it actually is this bizarre long film that I think is absolutely lyrical and beautiful. Celine and Julie Go Boating by Jacques Rivette is a film that is based on Alice in Wonderland in a way because it's two women taking a journey going on an odyssey. It came out from Criterion, by the way. I'll try to cite the
When was this released and what's the title again?
That's a good question. The original date is 1974, and they just put it out on Criterion in the last year or two. Finally, it took them forever to do it. There's still one missing Rivette that's a masterpiece they haven't put out. Rivette is kind of the least known. I won't run through my entire thing I did on the show, but he's sort of the least known of the core group of the French New Wave, who were the guys who wrote for Cahiers du Cinema. There were two groups of the French New Wave, Agnes Varda and Chris Marker, and they were in the other group. But his group, he's the least known. Everybody knows the other guys, Eric Romer, Chabrol, Godard Truffaut. They don't really know his work, probably because it's too daunting, it's too long. But he's also, I wrote, when I wrote a review of it, I said, this is the breeziest 3-hour film you can see, Celine and Julie, because he had a thing about game playing. He had a thing about conspiracies. His other major films are all about conspiracies. And you find out that the guy who's the paranoid is actually right. There is a conspiracy. But his movies would start slowly, and then they would start to gain pace. And what he does here is he has two women, one of them who is a nightclub magician, which is very lovely, Juliette Berthaud in a bunch of Godard films, and a woman, Dominique Le Bourrier, who works at a library. So the idea of the library comes in the books. They never, I think they do mention Alice in Wonderland like twice, but what it is these two girls bond. It becomes a female buddy movie. It's shot mostly outdoors with some indoor scenes that are always pertinent to this crazy plot that goes on. They discover candies, and if they pop these candies candies in their mouth. They're in a house. They share a dream together. And in the house, there's a murder that they have to prevent. So it becomes this weird kind of thing. It's a Henry James novel that they decided to throw in. The actresses were writing the film with Rivette as it went along. So it is, as I say, a 3-hour film, but it's a fantasy shot in real locations. It was their summer movie. They decided to have a summer vacation type movie and make this very loose-limbed thing where you first fall in love with the girls. You really like the characters. Women like the film because their friendship is very naturalistic, and it's kind of, it's them being very friendly to each other, a little bitchy to each other, them helping each other out, being mates and everything. But the most important thing about their view of this thing, by the way, that was interpreted to be LSD, the idea that you pop something. But really? the directors and the other ones said we just needed a device. They defended themselves and said they were people who had experimented with drugs, but they didn't intend it to be that way. They wanted it to have the simplicity of a children's thing, like the tea and it
was like a sugar high, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Or like
it wasn't that either.
Yeah,
I hate like to no end, but
I know it's a Lewis Carroll kind of eat me, drink me thing. It's a way to get them in the house. And as they go into the house, what became interesting to me in rewatching the film as you go on, and this is just another level, it functions on a million levels. One is just a fun, silly movie because they begin to make fun of the murder in the house. It's a little too austere. It's acted out by these great actresses. It was Marie-France Pizier, Boulogier, and Barbette Schroeder, who became a filmmaker, who was producing it. Later became a director. Yep. So they're in the house and they reenact this as if it's a play that they have to do. And these two girls are like sort of hippie girls. They make fun of it. So in watching it the last time, I realized they are the audience to the drama. They are the critics of the drama. But then when they become involved and they try to stop the murder, which is, as I'm saying, his films speed up as they go along. So the last third of the movie is them in the dream, them in the house. Can we stop the murder? And suddenly the film is incredibly fast, but it's also them making fun of the bad acting. And like, oh, this is so silly. Why are they doing this? But can we get the little girl away? They're going to murder a little girl in the plot and they got to get her away. And then the end is the last scene of the film, the boating. But it's this incredibly interesting movie because I think he was a director who sort of took you on a journey, and he would do things like play with the idea of an Alice in Wonderland, that, it begins with a woman losing, I think, her scarf or something. And she goes, hey, you left your scarf. It basically, what is that? Not the Mad Hatter. It's the
White Rabbit.
The White Rabbit, I'm late for a very important date. Yeah, basically that's the beginning of the movie and that's the end. He ends with the other one dropping something. And so it's all that kind of thing. He was compared recently, they did a festival at Lincoln Center with David Lynch's Mulholland Drive, the idea that there's a wormhole that you go through and then you go through this whole experience that could be a child's game. It could be a very serious thing where they're killing politicians or something. He did some really cool conspiracy movies, but it's always this idea of a game being played by the participants. And that's why it begins where you don't know the rules of the game. And then as you go through the movie, you're like, oh, this is actually very interesting. This is a gun gets introduced or something complicates the plot line where you become more involved in the film. So that's my first one. That's the highest start I'll give you guys.
Is it kind of sounds incredible? What's the title again?
Oh, Celine, and in English it's called, and it's on Criterion as Celine and Julie Go Boating, which is a weird title, but it is,
Summer blockbusters were quite different.
It sounds like
really
a DVD Matt has hidden in the back of his collection.
Yes.
I have something of that title, but it's not that movie.
Yes. The oddest thing was I won't even say, I'm flipping channels one time and I'm watching iCarly, and this just came on. I don't watch iCarly all the time, but that guy, whoever Dan Schneider, the guy who's now been a lot of issues with Dan Schneider, two little girls say, and that's why I left it on for a minute, because they go, your fans are here, Celine and Julie. And I was like, Celine and Julie is being referenced on iCarly? What the fuck? So there's this weird thing where there's fans of this movie. It wasn't on DVD at that time. It was on, was it ever? It was on VHS from New Yorker. New Yorker went bankrupt.
Is it the kind of movie that would have been on the Z channel back in the day or something?
Well, I actually, one of my choices, but we won't get to that, is one that only played on the Z channel. Yes, it would have been. It would have been, and they would have had to have blocked it off for like Bravo, the original Bravo. My favorite thing about the tapes my uncle made for me of the original Bravo was they'd bring on Phyllis Newman or David Denby to explain all of Godard in a 1 3-minute segment. It's like kind of this insane thing where they go, Godard is a director and he does nonlinear thing, and it's this insane thing where they were tasked with explaining the film. Last Year at Marienbad is not in chronological order. It tells you about and it's like, wow, you're actually going to try to explain that movie to me in 3 minutes. They used to do that because they felt it needed, and for some movies like Last Tango, they're like, we don't need an intro. But for a lot of the more intellectual movies they show, we're showing Bertolucci's Spider Stratagem. It's about a town, and it's one of these Borges stories. It's a story within a story, and they felt like Phyllis Newman sitting there reading off cards, like Robert Osborne used to say things thing. My favorite things were the mistakes they make. Like, now we will show Roger Corman's Faster Pussycat Kill Kill. That was said one night on TCM.
Wow.
So they just read right off the card. So you knew that Robert Osborne did not know what he was reading. He would actually make mistakes because what he was doing, Ben Mankiewicz does it too. They just read off the card.
Sure.
Yes.
But you know what though? I really like that new Australian girl on TCM. I'm sorry.
I mean, they're all good people.
They're all brimming with personality.
Yes. I mean, the thing is, I have a friend who met Mankiewicz, and he's the nicest guy in the world. So it's another case where when he's there, he's got to read what's on the cards, and he may not go, hey, that, like, I would literally stop it and go, that Roger Corman didn't direct that. He doesn't really know about Ross Meyer movies. So that was going to be the problem, was doing those underground films on the Friday night. So anyway, but that is my highest art. I have others. By the way, the directors, people came to him, and this is on the Criterion Extras, and said, what does it mean? What is it about? Is it about females being sublimated to men? And he said, all interpretations are right. He basically said, whatever you think you got from it is okay by me. And those are my favorite kind of filmmakers.
Really?
Larry loves that kind of movie.
He loves that kind of movie.
Larry's head explodes in this kind of movie. He just can't handle it.
But that's actually like Lynch. That links him to Lynch. I almost said lynches him to Lynch. It links him to Lynch because Lynch does not explain Eraserhead. He doesn't talk about his movies in any kind of what did it mean. He'll tell you how he shot it, except for the baby in Eraserhead, but he'll never explain the movies. I mean, I've seen when interviewers ask him, there's a French-Canadian documentary where the guy shows some pictures of Eraserhead, and he goes, oh, and he's loving the pictures, and he goes, and what would the lady under the radiator mean? And Lynch goes, we don't talk about that. We don't, and he just shuts him down. He doesn't want to discuss. Buñuel used to do that too. Buñuel used to ask the guy, what do you think it means? Like there's a moment in Belvedere where there's these little buzzing things in a box, and these Mexican guys who interviewed Buñuel before he died said, what's in the box? That drove me crazy. And he goes, what box? And they reminded him of the scene because he was an older man. And he goes, what do you think's in the box? Like he didn't want to give them like, it's a bee in the box. It's something that would scare somebody. He just felt it's a scary thing that frightens people in the box. That's
right. Why explain it?
I know.
I think an explanation is good.
I know, but you're the guy who wants, at the end of the birds to have
Mr. Literal.
Yes.
Nuclear waste.
Yes. So it's like, look, honey, that's why the birds have reacted this strangely. It's that nuclear accident.
Because if Larry, that had ever been done, that movie would have never, ever
I would have liked it more.
Actually, we won't go off on this tangent. I'm sorry to tangent other movies, but I know Jim is very familiar with. There is a movie called Birdemic that does try that. It tries to actually explain what Hitchcock was doing.
There you go, Larry. That's one of your speed.
Yes, only one of the worst films ever.
I know, but that movie does try to explain that it's because of the ecology and that it's the global warming is causing these birds to kill everyone. And you
would have turned the birds into Birdemic.
You know what? No, in the hands of a better director, that might have worked.
Birdemic.
Wow.
Interesting theory. Okay. I'd like to see like Lynch do Birdemic.
Well, that's good, Ed. Thanks. That's a good. All right,
who's next?
Title.
Okay.
Who do we got?
James, why don't you
Well,
go?
I also coincidentally have a Lewis Carroll Through the Looking Glass related film. Now, before you mentioned David Lynch, and when I was thinking of this topic, it occurred to me that a lot of cult films, there are tour pieces because a lot of directors make a series of cult films. That's like their body of work. And it's David Lynch, it's Ken Russell, it's a bunch of these other guys, and one of them, Terry Gilliam. Before Brazil, before Baron Munchausen, before Fear and Loathing, before Time Bandits, his debut film was a movie called Jabberwocky. From 1977.
Yes.
Which uses as a springboard the Jabberwocky poem from Through the Looking Glass, which is ostensibly about a dragon that terrorizes a community, or at least menaces a community. And here you have Michael Palin, and again, this is from 1977, independently made, Terry Gilliam's first feature, and just a couple of years after Holy Grail, which he had co-directed with Terry Jones.
Right.
So here you have Michael Palin as a kind of a hapless, clueless son of a cooper, like a blacksmith. And it's the Middle Ages. And his dad dies and basically disowns him for being an annoying failure. So he goes off on his own and just trying to sort of survive. And he's starving for a while. And then little by little, from one misadventure to another, he finds himself in the king's palace, where he ends up meeting the princess, and through one misadventure after another, he becomes like the unwitting hero to slay the dragon, right? What it's really about is, and I think what Terry Gilliam was most concerned with doing, which was kind of the same as Holy Grail, was showing an unromanticized, very bleak, dirty view of what the Dark Ages were really like. Totally uncompromising, and also, extremely cynical and sardonic. It's Jabberwocky is just pretty much about that. There's also kind of a running gag about how the king and all the powerful men in the village don't want the dragon to be killed because it's actually good for business.
Something's never changed.
The Pope is saying we've never had so many people in the church now that this monster's running amok. So there's that. And I think a lot of Terry Gilliam movies have this sort of running through line of a hero that's not necessarily a willing hero, but he just sort of finds himself in this adventure, and then one thing leads to another. Watching it, I have a certain nostalgia for it because I was a big Monty Python fan. I am a big Monty Python fan, and Gilliam's in it, Terry Jones is in it, and I love Palin.
But it's not really Monty Python-esque.
Right. No, it's not
people
super funny.
People going to that think, oh, it's going to be great, another Holy Grail movie.
Right.
Nope.
No.
It's really the Holy Grail with about 1/4 of the laughs.
Yeah,
realistically.
And although the Jabberwocky itself is tremendous, I think.
I agree.
It's really interesting. It's like a suitmation thing. There was a guy in the suit. It's like a big rooster with these exposed skeleton and these tattered wings and this weird beak. If you're a casual Terry Gilliam fan, you should just check it out for the curiosity value and see what he did back in the very beginning and how that debut informed the rest of his body of work. But it's not necessarily a movie that I would just recommend you run out and see in and of itself.
It's not a laugh riot.
It's not supposed to be, though.
It's not supposed to be, but I mean, but like you, James, I was a giant and still am Python fan. And I remember going to see that thinking I was getting that kind of movie. And yes, it was not anything like that.
It's amusing.
I've seen it since then and have enjoyed it more. But
if you don't expect too much, you get more out of it. It is amusing, and especially like now post Game of Thrones, watching it, you got a little bit more out of it, because it's sort of like you see how these people are living, and
that's how I always felt about. I thought that Dragon Slayer in the 80s anticipated the gritty, dark, ugly Game of Thrones kind of medieval world too. That movie is really good at that. This is early 80s, and they make it gritty and real, and like it's which is cool.
Right. But the difference is that in Game of Thrones, you don't see, people pissing off the other side of the house and sitting from the window. And you see that in Jabberwocky, but
true.
But anyway,
should have been more of that in Game of Thrones.
I do remember back in I want to say the 80s that movie was playing midnight shows for a while. So that made me think of it as a cult film.
Yeah. No, that works.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Good. This is considered a cult film. I saw this film back at San Francisco State in my animation classes, and it seemed very appropriate today. And it's weird because it starts out being kind of funny, but where it ends is not funny at all. And I'm talking about
King of Kings?
Whoa. Okay.
No, not it's not quite as humorous as that one.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But it is from 1952, and it did win the Academy Award for Best Documentary Short Subject. And it's called Neighbors by Norman McLaren, who is a Canadian filmmaker. And this film is actually an anti-war film. And it's not necessarily live action. It's a live action environment, but everything is pixelated. So it's guys there's these two guys that they have these two little houses behind them, and what they do is they're pixelated and what happens is it seems like there are these two friendly neighbors next to each other, and like right in the center, right between them, grows a little flower. And what happens is they both are enamored with this flower, how they both smell it and either they're, intoxicated by it or whatever, but they both love this flower and each one of them wants this, and how it starts to go through this friendly competition into this very intense, angry fighting thing where they almost turn into monsters, and how they get so angry at each other because they want this thing that they destroy each other's house and family. And it's really shocking at what happens. But it's an 8-minute film, short. It's really great. And actually you can find it on YouTube. Again, it's called Neighbors from 1952. And I say it's a cult film because it's one of these things where when it came out in 52, it got noticed, but then it kind of vanished. Then it became really popular again in the 60s. And then it kind of vanished. Well, now it's like, in light of some of the stuff that's happening now, it's appearing again. I thought it was kind of appropriate to bring it up. It's also considered a cult film.
All right. No, that sounds great. Cool. I think I've seen it.
Was it like you say pixelated? So was it like standard cell animation?
No. So it's the live action. It's like these two guys, and it's like they take one frame and then they move a little bit.
Right.
And so they'll move around
kind of like the old Levi's jeans commercial.
Yeah, Sean, exactly.
That's
it's
my
kind
reference.
of like that.
Yeah.
And it's like some of it is they're moving naturally, and then they'll do the pixelated stuff. Okay. But it's really cool, and I think it's very appropriate for today. So check it out. Cult film Neighbors from 1952, Academy Award winner.
Nice.
Wonderful.
All right. I have one here that is really interesting that I had not seen ever, and just like maybe within the last year I saw and really liked. This I would say is like a existential thriller. And this is from 1970. It's a movie directed by Joseph Losey. It's called Figures in a Landscape.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, wow.
You seen that?
Yeah.
Grant
it's a good one.
Yeah, this is really interesting film. It's a Robert Shaw and a young Malcolm McDowell.
Oh.
And they're pretty much the only ones in the movie for the most part. And they're two escapees running. It starts out where their hands are tied behind their back. We don't know what exactly they've done or where exactly they're escaping from, but the whole movie is them being chased by one helicopter through the wilderness.
Wow.
And as they go along, Robert Shaw is, of course, this super gruff, brutish guy who's super hard and you got to kill to get what you want, and Malcolm McDowell is the more cautious, kind of thoughtful, like, wait, let's work this out. And, it's those kind of personalities fighting each other. But then you start to see kind of cracks in Robert Shaw's character, and you see Malcolm McDowell's getting a little more hardened and stepping up to the plate. And it's an amazing movie. And it's so well photographed. I forget where they film it, but it's all in this kind of wilderness. They come across some small little dwellings, and they just steal food from some places. But the whole movie is this helicopter. The helicopter is the third character in the movie. Mm-hmm. I would say the closest thing would be if you remember Capricorn 1. The way those helicopters kind of had a personality. Right, yeah. It's like that, but it's one helicopter, and you never see the pilots, and you never see the pilots' faces. You see there's amazing point of views from the helicopter going across this terrain, and there's scenes and shots where, it's really this helicopter diving super close to Robert Shaw and Malcolm McDowell. It's pretty amazing, and it's just this battle of wits, and it's an incredible one. I guess the movie had a pretty troubled production. It was originally going to be Peter Medak who directed it, and he was taken off of it, and Joseph Losey took over, and it was going to be Peter O'Toole originally instead of Robert Shaw.
Really?
But they're both amazing too. Robert Shaw is fantastic. Yeah. He just,
great in everything.
He's such a presence, such a force of nature, but so is Malcolm McDowell. He's great. And this is right. I think it was right after McDowell did If, but before he'd hit it super big with Clockwork Orange. And it's just really well made. It's kind of hypnotic. It's just really, really well done. And I don't want to give anything away, but it's not the kind of movie that has the ending is kind of left up a little bit to your, interpretation too. Oh. But following these two characters, it's a character study, and just seeing what these two kind of personalities, what they do to survive and how they have to help each other, even when they don't want to. But it's really good, really well acted. Figures in a Landscape. I think Kino Lorber has put it out on DVD and Blu-ray. Definitely worth checking out.
That's amazing because I'm a big fan of Losey. I don't know if you guys know his history. He was an American. He's from Wisconsin. I had to look it up quickly what state, because he was from, I think, the adjoining town of Nicholas Ray.
Yeah, and he went to England, right?
Yeah, he went to England and had this. He said, "Fuck you," like John Barry, these two American directors, and Jules Dassin, actually, who went away, and they had these great careers. And he became the foremost Pinter director. Like, he directed these films that are incredibly beautiful in England. And then at that time, actually, it's great you picked that one, because in that period he was floundering a little. He did Boom with Burton and Taylor, which is funny bad. He did Modesty Blaze works. So that one is actually closer to his Pinter films. It's closer to what he did well, which is this kind of dubious morality.
It's like stripped, all the fluff stripped away. And it's just, and I'm telling you that just the shots of this helicopter, flying into shade. It sounds like, it's really compelling. It's really well done. With those two actors, it's like you're kind of glued.
It sounds a little like Duel too.
A little bit, right. But even more kind of existential, because it's like we don't really know. Like, we get little bits and pieces as they go along about their past, but not much. It's a lot of it is just like the situation.
Kind of the trial.
Yes. That's another. Yeah, a little bit like that. Yes. Yeah. So check it out. Figures in a Landscape.
Cool. Nice one, Sean.
Nice. All right. Yeah, I absolutely want to see that. Okay, so mine is a little different. This is a movie that I hate and enjoy at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And, I've talked quite a bit about Rock and Roll High School.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. Sure. The other big band for me of that time was the Sex Pistols. And their film,
I know which one you're gonna do.
The Great Rock and Roll Swindle.
Right.
It's a swindle.
Wait, what?
1980.
Matt, I don't know this. What?
The Great Rock and Roll Swindle. So this was made around the time when the Sex Pistols were falling apart. Oh. And they were still shooting stuff like right after their last show that they did in Winterland in 1978 in San Francisco. And so John Lydon went off and did PIL. And then Steve Jones and Paul Cook, they went with Malcolm McLaren, who was their manager, and they were still involved in making this Sex Pistols movie. Johnny Rotten he didn't want anything to do with this thing because the plot is really, it's basically Malcolm McLaren saying that he invented the Sex Pistols.
Right.
And it was all this, and that's like even the title. It's like it was this grand scheme to bilk all these record companies out of all their money, and punk rock and everything was just a scam. Which I'm sorry, but no. And and that's what Johnny Rotten, he had a giant problem with that. He's like, I don't want anything to do with this thing. He called it a pile of rubbish. And he says Malcolm's vision of what he believed, not true in any form. So, and it's weird. And there's a lot of downtime and weird stuff. But then there are really creative and fun parts. Great musical numbers. I mean, the scene in Sid and Nancy that everyone remembers where he's singing My Way, that's a recreation of this scene from The Great Rock and Roll Swindle. And it's weird because you see poor Sid, he looks sick. He does not look like he's going to make it much longer, but he still has this amazing charisma.
Right.
And there are animated sequences. There's even a nice little cameo from Sting. He's one of the members of a gay rock band called the Blow Waves.
Wow.
They try to kidnap Paul Cook at one point. And I'm trying to remember because in my research, they said that scene was cut and then it was put in The Filth and the Fury, which is the 2000 Sex Pistols documentary, which is amazing, by the way. And it's interesting because they both have the same director, Julian Temple.
Oh, yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
And Julian Temple, I guess he just saw this as an opportunity to make a movie, and it's Sex Pistols, and there's a lot of really clever artistic things in it, but then there's just rubbish. It's just this stuff with Malcolm McLaren. But as disjointed as it is, and how it goes from one high to one low, there's something really captivating about it. And just then they do weird things, like all of a sudden they've got, like, there was this big train robbery that happened in the 60s. Right. And so one of the people involved was this guy named Ronnie Biggs. And so Ronnie Biggs went to jail, but then escaped from jail and made his way to Brazil. So for some reason in this movie, they go to Brazil and find Ronnie Biggs, and they get him to record a song. And the song is really good. It's actually one of the better songs in the movie. And
so
it's
bizarre.
No one is innocent. Right. And he does another one too. But it's so strange.
There's the song that remains with me from that is that 10-pole tutor who killed Bambi. It's just him saying the line, who killed Bambi, which was the movie the Sex Pistols were going to make with Roger Ebert writing it and Russ Meyer directing.
Wait a minute.
There was going to be a Russ Meyer.
Roger Ebert?
Roger Ebert was going to script it, and he met with them. And,
yes, he did.
Russ hated them. Russ hated them because he was an old World War II vet, and he couldn't stand the punks. So it only remained. I think that's the only trace in this film. Maybe you know better. Was there any other trace of what would have been Who Killed Bambi and Rock and Roll Swindle? I think that's about the only reference to it because he keeps saying the phrase.
The only thing I remember is at one point I had a 45 of I think it was The Great Rock and Roll Swindle, the song, and I think on the back of it there was a picture of a deer with an arrow in it.
Wow. Okay.
It said Who Killed Bambi. And I think I just recently read this pretty great Russ Meyer biography called Big Bosoms and Square Jaws by Jimmy McDonough. And they talk about that. And it's just, that was just two worlds colliding. The Sex Pistols.
Because they liked Beyond the Rally of the Dolls. They were big fans. I guess they watched it in their tour bus. If they even had a tour bus, they would watch Beyond the Rally of the Dolls. And they said, he got it. He understands rock and roll, which Russ hated rock and roll.
That's right. He hated it.
He hated it. So, and he also thought they were snotty little kids. And this is why we liberated your country. And he had an attitude of an old veteran meeting these young British punks saying, we're Americans. We came here. We freed you people. Fuck you.
I can totally see that.
Yes.
Look, people make fun of him because he liked big-breasted ladies, but hey, he was that from that generation, though. His generation,
he had his thing,
But look, if you are looking for a rollicking comedy or the definitive Sex Pistols movie that's like, A Hard Day's Night for the Sex Pistols, this is not it.
Right.
But there are wonderful moments, and the SID numbers in it are both good. Something else is wonderful.
Something else, which is what's his name? I can't think of the singer. Not Johnny Cochran. I can't think of his name. Who did Summertime Blues? The guy who did Summertime Blues. I can't do his name. Right.
God. Wait a minute.
Eddie Cochran.
Eddie Cochran. Thank you.
Yes. Oh God. Yeah.
Oh, the brain. The brain.
It goes first.
That one is that one. And it took me forever to finally see it too, because for a while you couldn't get it even on video, and then I finally got the video, and then gradually, everything is going to be released. But it's such an oddity.
Right.
But there you go. The Great Rock and Roll Swindle. I have the British Quad poster. Nice. That poster is brilliant.
Wow.
Cool.
That's nice, Matt. All right, Ed.
Is it, Larry?
It is. I'd actually be interested in seeing that. Believe it.
Yeah. So
maybe we'll do that.
Well, look, because you pushed me over the edge to see Rock and Roll High School, and I enjoyed that. But
I love that.
You like this more. You'll like. You'll like Rock and Roll High School way more than you'll like this.
Yes, but you've given me the you've warned me, but it's like what is out there of the Sex Pistols. I mean, in this film, I think that would be interesting to see. So. Thank you for sharing, Matt.
You got it.
Ed, how about you?
Okay, this one is actually, and I'm not trying to cheat here, but I will introduce a trilogy, and mostly the first one is the one to focus on, but the other two are amazing. And I believe you can get the second and third immediately free on YouTube because they're very minor products. The Harry Hurwitz Nostalgia Trilogy. I'm calling them trilogy. They're probably like a troika. None of the movies relate to each other in plot, but they all have appearances by the star of the first one, Chuck McCann. Harry Hurwitz was an independent filmmaker in New York who worked in the comedy realm, and I just interviewed recently casually just to say why this has been obsessing me lately. I interviewed a gentleman named Robert Statz. He's this guy who appears in all three of these films. And all of my friends and I were like, was he a stand-up comic? Who the hell? He comes in as a pitchman, my friends. It turns out Robert Statz was a front talker for carnivals who also worked as an ad man. Harry Hurwitz met him in that capacity through a friend, Jonathan Kaplan, the director. And he put him in these films to do these pitches, my friend. So he's in all these films coming in and going out. And you're like, who the hell was that pitchman? That guy was amazing. And it turned out the gentleman spoke to me on the phone. I did an interview that's on mediafunhouse.blogspot.com. But the first movie is the one that you can get on DVD. It's been on TCM. I really think anybody who's a movie fan, particularly an American genre movie fan, The Projectionist with Chuck McCann is this incredible love letter.
Oh, yeah. I have them. Yeah,
it's a love letter. Yeah.
It's a good little love story. It's
a Valentine to old movies. And it has this two-sided thing. First, of course, the plot is, for people who don't know, it's Sherlock Jr. It's basically Chuck McCann's a projectionist who loves old movies, and he was a incredible impressionist himself of Oliver Hardy, and he did everybody. He basically disappears into a film and he becomes a superhero. The joke about that is that he was overweight and he's in a small body-fitting suit, so he's too fat for the suit. And the villain is the theater owner. I think they shot it in the New Yorker in the West 80s, which was the big place that became New Yorker Films, etc. And in the film, the villainous guy says, "Put salt in the popcorn. We want them to order more popcorn." Is Rodney Dangerfield in this first movie. He's the villain. He's in a superhero outfit that he's too fat for too. So the joke is that it's two fat men fighting. So it's better than Marvel movies, in my opinion, because it's all natural. There's no CGI that relates to that. He looks like Captain Midnight. Chuck McCann's superhero wears ear flaps. He wears like an aviator's cap. Captain Midnight.
Yeah, it's like super cheesy, like looking. Yeah. It's like a cinephile's version of Walter Mitty.
Yes. It's this wet dream of it. But the thing that makes it crazy, and the thing is, he interacts with films. He interacts with not only Bogart in Casablanca, Citizen Kane is shown at one point, Buster Keaton, God knows, he's got Alan Ladd and Garfield are in it. So the thing is, I talked to his wife. I haven't interviewed her formally, but I spoke to Mrs. Hurwitz about this remake of the second film we're going to talk about in 1 second. And she said, he made one deal. Because I said, how did he make a deal to get all that footage back in 1969 when he made the film? The film was released in 70. He just made a deal in perpetuity so he can. So the film is now shown. It was restored by MoMA and shown on TCM in like prime time because everybody loves it so much who loves films. And he's just got things where Chuck McCann's looking at and he's nodding at Rick and
it's like later Steve Martin did it with Dead Man.
That's what I put. He preceded this by a decade.
Don't wear plaid.
Yeah, he did this. This is 1969, 1970. So he precedes Zelig. He precedes all of that. Wow. Yeah, Dead Man Don't Wear Plaid. And the other part of the movie, which I was fascinated by, which is only a little bit of the movie, the running time is about 90 minutes, is that Chuck McCann's an average guy. He's a single guy. He goes through Times Square, so you get this incredible Times Square footage. He goes right down the Deuce. He eats in the Greasy Spoon, used to be next to one of the theaters. He buys adult materials, goes home, he watches a movie. And it's one of the only films I've seen where the guy who buys porn mags is not a pervert or it doesn't lead to anything.
Thank you, Ed.
That's exactly what I was amazed. I'm amazed at, and I used it when I did an interview with the writer Josh Allen Friedman about the Deuce. We talked about 42nd Street because he used to write for Screw Magazine and do these histories. He did a beautiful book called Tales of Times Square. And The Projectionist has this, and it's not even part of the plot. It's just something that Harry Hurwitz put in as a fugue, like a 5-minute, 10-minute interlude where he just walks, and it's just Chuck coming down from the Upper West Side, downtown 242nd, buys a newspaper, goes in, gets some porn, goes to get his dinner, blah, 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 goes home.
Hey, Harry, how much is for a copy of Orgasm?
Yes, there's no
bananas.
Bananas.
Right. But it's what's interesting is the second and third movies in this trilogy. The second one was never released, but it's already been remade. That won't make any sense to folks.
I did not know this was part of a trilogy.
Well, the thing is, he wouldn't say it was a trilogy, Mr. Hurwitz, but the thing is, he made movies that are like quickie straight to videos with like sex in them. He has like hardcore, softcore movies, mostly softcore. And the thing was, he made 3 nostalgia comedies. So I've sort of made them into a trilogy. You might want to call it a troika. The second movie is called The Comeback Trail, and it has the weirdest, most bizarre history, which I wrote about again on mediafunhouse.blogspot.com. He started it in 71, kept filming it over the years. It was his love project that he always felt I can make a little better until 79. Then it shows up at the Thalia Theater in Manhattan. It played a weekend, 2 days, 3 days in a row, and it showed up on Channel Z. I have actually a bootleg of a beta copy from Channel Z, which is a different copy of the movie than you guys will see on YouTube, because Mr. Hurwitz kept refining it and re-editing it. According to his wife, it's not a finished film. It never was. So the first version of the film that's on YouTube, the one that gets up and it gets down, is Hugh Hefner is hearing the story at the mansion from the star Buster Crabbe, who's in the movie. It's basically the plot of The Producers. Two producers who owe money to the mafia. And it's Robert Statz, this guy who was a front talker, who talked like that, and Chuck McCann doing a bad Italian accent. Their name is Kodak and Eastman. They both have those names. And they want to kill their star. They say, hey, we have insurance out on the star. And they see him as an old man, Buster Crabbe. He's got a mustache and he's got glasses. And they don't know that he's Buster Crabbe. So when he comes on the set, they're ready to kill him. They're ready to give him stunts so they can collect the insurance and pay off the mob. Recently, it was remade with De Niro. I swear to God, this exists, but it's been shelved. It appeared during the pandemic and it went to the UK. It didn't do any openings here in America. De Niro plays Chuck McCann's role. I'm not making this up. You can look it up on IMDb. Wow. Tommy Lee Jones plays Buster Crabbe, and they added a mobster because you don't see the mobsters in Harry Hurwitz's crazy comedy. Morgan Freeman is the mobster. So they took the plot.
What's that version called? What's that movie?
That's called The Comeback Trail, oddly enough, because it had a reputation at the mansion. Supposedly Hefner had a copy and would show it, and people like James Caan and all the people, it was a favorite of people in the business. So this the guy who wrote Midnight Run, is it George Gallo? He did the remake. He directed and wrote a remake with De Niro and it's Zach playing the Robert Statz role, the sidekick, is that guy from Scrubs, Zach. I can never remember the guy. That guy, he plays the Robert Statz role. So they're the two guys ripping off. And it's this weird, what's most interesting in The Comeback Trail is when they show us the films they've made, which leads to the third film and this weird, they do sort of form a trilogy, Adequate Pictures. The joke is their company is called Adequate Pictures. So they made all these terrible monster movies, one of which actually, so this is up your street here on the podcast, one of them is Lenny Schultz, the comedian who used to play Chickens. So he's the bionic chicken and Professor Erwin Corey is the mad scientist figure. And that's a monster movie they made. And they made what was their thing? Oh my God, there's a lot of Jewish jokes because Harry Hurwitz was big into Jewish humor. So there's a lot of like Jewish joke comedy, musicals, etc. So the third film, which you can find on YouTube, the last second and third films, that's Adequate, hosted by Tony Randall, is a parody of like That's Entertainment. And it's this studio. And it's basically... that's a good question because it came out on video. If I tell you a year, I'm just telling you the video release year. So I think it's 89, Adequate. But it's way before that. It's got to have been. Well, the thing is, it's two parts of a film because Harry Hurwitz lived in New York, then he lived in LA. So the New York cast is Tony Randall as the host, Stiller and Mara, James Coco, Joe Franklin, Erwin Corey, Brother Theodore, Chuck McCann, Peter Riegert, Robert Vaughn. That's the East Coast cast. Then it becomes a West Coast movie, and that's where he loses ground. It's 2/3 of a great movie. It's very funny when he's parodying. At one point, he shows you that Valentino, whatever the version of Valentino, died. So they propped him up and he's playing the Sheik dead and everyone's playing to a dead mannequin. They have the Three Stooges, their version of the Three Stooges would hurt each other. So they have an interview with an old man in a nursing home who actually has holes in his head. It's that kind of comedy.
Wow.
It is.
It was great.
When I talked to Mrs. Hurwitz, she said, it's really guy comedy he did a lot. And I said, yeah, really, I find that endlessly funny and women don't laugh. It's just the Three Stooges chromosome thing that women don't laugh.
Yeah,
that's true. So the weird part is when he goes to LA, it becomes the 80s and he's doing 80s comedy and he's off his common ground. He did something where he got all the comedians. He's got Bud Friedman from the Improv, let him use all the comedians for a parody of, was it called Live Aid? The thing that was...
We Are the World?
We Are the World. Yeah. So it's got Sinbad, Richard Lewis, Dom Herrera, Rick Overton, just 2 or 3 names. So it's got all these people who must have been there at the club that night.
Yeah,
but the thing is, that stuff is
YouTube or something?
It's on YouTube. It's a very bad copy on YouTube.
That's adequate.
That's adequate. And the thing is, the other 2 people... It was coming out on DVD at one point, like a cost cutter DVD that you'd find in a CVS or a Rite Aid. And they put Bruce Willis on it because in the LA stuff, Bruce Willis was a young actor and he's in like 2 minutes. And Robert Downey Jr., because these people all knew, he knew Robert Downey Sr., Harry Hurwitz. That's the other guy that Robert Statz worked for, is Robert Downey Sr. They all were part of a scene in New York. So that's the part of the movie that for me doesn't work. But that whole trilogy as a whole, I recommend unabashedly The Projectionist to your listeners. They would love it as long as they like.
That's a fun film.
Yeah, and it definitely harkens back to the 30s and 40s, the serials. My dad used to call them the chapters. They were these little cliffhanging serials where they would cheat you, like talked about in Misery, that the guy would die, but he never dies. But the second and third films are just curiosities for those of us who like seeing Chuck McCann and, doing this weird Italian accent. And it's
the projectionist will make a good double feature with a TV movie from the 70s called The Phantom of Hollywood.
Yes, I remember that one.
Jack Cassidy as like this makeup artist, or like he's a crazed kind of actor who they're tearing down the studios and he wants to keep it there, and he disguised himself. So it's like a Phantom of the Opera, only it's the backlot of a movie studio.
Yeah,
I thought you were going to say the double feature was going to be with that episode of Columbo, where Chuck McCann is the projectionist.
That's the Robert Culp episode with the subliminal frames.
Yes, forgot about that. Right,
that's true. But you're true. That's true. He played a projectionist. Right. Yeah, that's like his extended care, and that's around the same time too. That's like in the 70s.
There's a thing about the nickel. Remember the nickel?
Right?
The nickel.
Wow. I do remember that. I do. It falls out. Yeah, it's interesting because what he does here, Harry Hurwitz, because he's politically left. So what he did was he has all of this stuff that you would see in like Head or The Magic Christian, all these cuts to black and white movies where the Vietnamese guy is getting shot in the head. The famous
or like what's the Myra Breckinridge? Did that too.
Where they got sued for that. And he has a classic weird moment that's very kind of radical, dealing with the Kennedy mythos, where he's got he's actually got Hitler talking, and I think you hear the voice of JFK going, "Ask not what your country can do for you." So he's got these superimpositions where you're like, "Whoa, that was ballsy." And it's kind of like and actually Robert Stack's thing is the International Brotherhood kit, my friends, which is very, and I won't quote it because whatever, but they don't say the N word, but there's un-PC. The whole joke is it's for people who don't want to like the other races. So the front talker guy I talked to does a pitch for, you don't really have to fraternize with these people. You can do this. And that's on YouTube as one clip alone. It's called like the World Brotherhood Kit. And it's a late night commercial that Chuck McCann turns the channel and sees. And then you're like, who the hell was that? Was that guy a stand-up comedian? And I found out he's just an old front talker from carnivals who Harry Hurwitz hired and said, could you vamp like 3 minutes about this?
Wow.
So I would say those films, particularly the projectionist, but if you're on YouTube and you want to see parts of That's Adequate, it's very funny. And the Comeback Trail is a mess. It's an absolute mess.
But it's adequate.
Yeah.
I'm there.
That's a con.
I gotta see that.
We almost called this podcast That's Adequate.
No, come on.
Yeah. But we couldn't guarantee that.
We couldn't guarantee that we always hit that level.
That's a good line. I like that line.
All right, James.
Good one.
Nice one.
That's a great one.
Okay. This next one for me is an Italian spy-ploitation movie from 1967.
Nice.
At the height of the James Bond craze. And it's really a vehicle to take advantage of Sean Connery's brother.
Oh my God. I love this movie. I have it on DVD. I have the soundtrack to this movie.
Wow.
It's called OK Connery, a.k.a. Operation Kid Brother.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
Oh my goodness.
It's fantastic.
It really is. It's where a super spy gets assassinated. And so they find the lead spy in England, who they never name him as being 007, but they find his younger brother, whose name is still his actual name, Neil Connery, in the movie. They don't change his name.
And it's really Neil Connery, who is Sean Connery's brother.
Sean Connery's brother.
Who has no screen presence. He can't act.
Zero screen presence. He could look a little bit like him, but they don't even try. He's wearing a beard throughout the whole thing. His hair is lighter than Sean's.
Right.
And he's dubbed the entire time by somebody without a Scottish accent. So it's like, well, wait a second, none of this works. But it is gonzo fun. What they did do was they blew the budget on Bond character actors.
Yes, they populated. The movie itself is actually a pretty fun, pretty clever parody of Bond films on a pretty decent budget.
Yes. And it's also...
name the cast, though.
Well, Lois Maxwell, Moneypenny, has a lot of screen time.
She shoots a gun. She shoots a machine gun in the scene.
Yeah, and she's throughout the whole movie. She's like an agent. Yeah. And Bernard Lee, who played M.
Yeah.
Daniela Bianchi from Russia with Love, who actually looks much better in this movie than she did in Russia with Love.
Yeah.
Wow.
Adolfo Celli.
Adolfo Celli's the bad guy.
And without an eye patch, but they give him a monocle in some scenes.
Yeah.
Right.
No, but it's so fun. Oh my gosh, it's really so fun.
It's fun and gonzo. And you're watching it, you actually sort of feel like you're watching an Austin Powers. It's that goofy. Yeah. And the score is by Bruno Nicolai and Ennio Morricone.
Oh my God. The main title song is fantastic.
And it's a song. It's a song, by a vocalist named Christy, who's trying to do a Shirley Bassey.
Yes,
and the song is all over the place.
But it's so great.
It changes tempo, and she goes out of breath, and it's like a one-take deal. But it's an
great choice.
It's Italian countryside, and it's gorgeous cinematography, gorgeous.
It really needs to be released. Like, it should be remastered and released on like Blu-ray. And also, it's great because it's a parody too. Because like. Neil Connery, he's like a master, a hypnotist and a surgeon and an archer. Like, he does everything. It's ridiculous. But again, he's like, it's like Sean Connery's boring brother.
He's got no presence, zero presence. And the thing is, with Connery, it was all about the presentation.
Right.
You're looking at this, they don't even try. They're just you don't have to shave the beard, you don't have to dye your hair. We're not gonna build up your introduction. You're just there. We're not even gonna use your real voice. And another thing about it is like it's a lot of Italian films or European films from the period populated with truly gorgeous women.
Oh,
One of them,
all the girls on the boats, like running.
Yeah. And an actress named Agata Flori, who I never saw in anything else, but she plays a character called Mildred, and she's a beautiful, exotic, stunning woman.
There's also kind of a Rosa Klebb type character in there too.
Yes, whose name is Klebb. It's not Klebb.
It's like Kreyendorf or something.
It's the actress who played Rosa Klebb. They use her name.
Lottie Lenya? Oh, Lottie Lenya.
Oh, is it? You're right.
She's in the movie.
Lottie. They call her Lottie.
Oh, they call her Lottie. Okay.
So they couldn't get Lottie Lenya, but
right.
They called her Lottie. Okay.
I got it.
Awesome.
Okay.
Wow.
So it's all of this sort of wink stuff. It's gonzo. It's a lot of fun. Again, it's OK Connery from 1967, aka Operation Kid Brother.
I mean, I'm a huge Eurospy fan. There's that's another genre, by the way. I kind of look at it at the same way I look at like Japanese tokusatsu. It's like you cannot comprehend how many productions of European spy movies that were made since when Dr. No came out till into even like the early 80s. It's like insane.
Yeah. Well, it's like spaghetti westerns, or
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah,
or peplum. You start looking at how many of these were there, and then it's infinite.
Yeah, I know. Wow. That's a good one, James.
It's a lot of fun.
Sounds good.
Nice one, James. Nice one. Well, let's go back to the world of animation again. Okay.
All right.
And there's this really cool filmmaker. Again, it's another unique animator that I learned about in animation class at San Francisco State. There's this gentleman called Alexander Alexiev who was the inventor of the pin screen. Now, I don't know if you guys know the pin screen. Imagine a giant board, and in the board is these itty bitty little pins, and they're all like next to each other. And he would animate by pushing the pin out a little bit, and by light creates like visuals. Now,
that's
for
cool.
me, if you know how you go to a toy store and they find that little pin thing you push up against your face and makes an imprint of your face.
Yeah.
Well, imagine taking something like that and making it about 50 times larger. And now if you imprinted your face, imagine now trying to animate those pins, making your face like open and your eyes blink and stuff. That's what this guy did. And people have told me it's like one of the most insane ways to animate. In fact, it's like very few people would animate with it because it was so difficult. And studios didn't want to touch it because it took so long to deal with. Well, what's interesting is he's Russian born. He was an artist. He moved to Paris to study art and got into this whole pinboard thing. And there, what was interesting is, he brought along his wife, and he met this young American student who was studying in Paris, and she saw some of his artwork and went, "Oh man, I want to meet." She thought she was going to meet this old artist. Instead, she meets this guy who's like 30 years old. Well, she thinks he's brilliant and wants to work with him. Well, eventually she becomes his lover, and his wife's oh man. But as a team, they all kind of work together. And one of his favorite musical compositions was A Night on Bald Mountain. And he decided to make an animated film based on the music from Night on Bald Mountain. And this was years before Disney's 1940 Fantasia.
Really?
Yes.
What year is this?
So he started making this in 1931. Wow. He didn't finish it till like 1934, although people say that it was released in 1936. Some people say 1938, so it's not really sure. It's possible it could have been released. But the interesting thing, guys, you can find this on YouTube, and it's absolutely bizarre, and it's amazing because the woman that he got involved with, Claire, her name was Claire. She was actually very mathematical and artistic, and she was the one who operated the camera where he did the animation. She was very patient. Sometimes he would get frustrated, but so what they would do is they had the pinboard, and she would click. They would film his drawings as he's doing the pinboard, but it takes such a long time. But some of the stuff is slightly out of focus. Sometimes it's right on, and sometimes it isn't. But what you see, it's like as the music starts, you go see this mountain. It's a mountain, and then you see like these clouds and ghostly figures, and then you see this horse. And again, it's weird because when you watch it, you're wondering how did they animate it? It's not cell animation. Yeah, and is it with pastels? No, it's with this really bizarre pinboard. And it's weird as you get into it. There's something that's kind of like spiritual or spooky about it. It's not quite, you don't see ghosts coming out of graves like in Disney's animated thing, but it is really cool, and it's really kind of funky. What's interesting is it took him so long to do. It wasn't until I guess in the late 60s where someone took over his pinboard, and they did another film called Mindscape. But Night on Bald Mountain they're saying either 1938 or 1934. From
what was the guy's name again?
Alexander Alexiev.
Alexa, okay.
Yeah. And it's and I think it's interesting because when people think of the Night on Bald Mountain, they think of Disney's Fantasia, which is one of my favorites, but actually someone did animation of that tune before Disney's animated.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yet another one I want to see.
It is kind of a cult classic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's cool.
Fantastic.
Cool. Okay, I go on. This one's more in the kind of like, drive-in pulp, just plain fun kind of exploitation category. And this is a film that just recently came out on Blu-ray from Vinegar Syndrome. I did a great job restoring it. And this is from 1991. It's a kind of a sci-fi horror film called Steel and Lace. And this was directed by Ernest Farino, who's known for, he does special effects. He did a lot of special effects for movies. Written by Joseph Dougherty. And this is really, it's a kind of idea like, wow, I can't believe nobody's thought of this before. It's basically taking the rape revenge story and combining it with the Terminator, kind of. It's basically Claire Wren plays this woman who is attacked by these guys in an alley by a bunch of guys, and she's raped. And cops catch them, and they're put on trial, but for various circumstances, they get off scot-free. So they're off, and they're the head guy of the gang. They're like hotshot, marketing executives, like, rich guys who have it all, running a business. So they get off scot-free. So then the woman, she kills herself. She commits suicide. She can't deal with it. However, she happens to have a brother played by Bruce Davidson, who happens to be a robotics expert. So he basically makes an android version of his sister and accentuates her with all these various deadly weapons inside of her to go after one by one the guys who raped her. So that's basically what it is. It's kind of like how Class of 1999 had the teachers who are androids, but then they have like the flamethrower comes out of their arm.
Yes.
It's like that kind of idea in a way. So she goes around and she can kind of, she dresses all sexy and she kind of looks a little different each time. So they don't remember who she is. And she approaches each guy, and one guy, she like says blades come out of her abdomen and, stick this guy. She's a flamethrower. She sets a guy on fire. She decapitates this guy. Like, it's really gory and fun. Really good effects. And like, she has to go back to to Bruce Davidson's lab every once in a while. He like takes off the back of her skull and adjusts. It's like he took her brain and put it encased in this android body. And it's just really fun, but it's like really well done. And the cop on the case who's trying to figure out what's going on is David Naughton.
Wow.
And you got Stacey Haydick in there as like a reporter, and it's really fun cat. Nick Tate is in there from Space 1999, Alan Carter. And really fun, 1991. It was kind of like a video rental regular, at the time. But, it kind of disappeared for a while, but it's now been released lovingly by Vinegar Syndrome. And it's really fun, smart. It's got good humor in it. All the cast are really good. I'm having a really fun time. It's played pretty straight, but in that kind of perfect kind of like pulp entertainment kind of tone, It's just done just right. And it moves really quick, great effects, gore.
Everything you want out of good entertainment.
Yeah, that's fun. I don't think not enough people know about it. So there's one for you.
It's called Steel and Lace, right?
Yep.
Steel and Lace. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fun.
Well, I've got another rock and roll movie.
Okay.
All right.
This one comes from 1983. Now, Alan Arkish is best known for Rock and Roll High School.
Mm-hmm.
But he did a follow-up movie that's not a sequel to Rock and Roll High School, but it feels like it's in the same universe. It's in the same vein. And it's called Get Crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Get Crazy came and went. And it's such a shame because it's so much fun. But, when they released it, I guess it was one of those movies that was kind of a write-off that it was like, the producers, they were hoping it was going to do badly. And so, they didn't do really anything to promote it. Although I do remember actually seeing a commercial for it back in the day and going, oh my God, I want to see that. And then it was gone. Yeah. But so what the movie's about is it's 1982, it's New Year's Eve, and the Saturn Theater is going to do this big show for their New Year's Eve. And the Saturn is run by this master showman guy, Max Wolf, who's Alan Garfield. And he's helped by the stage manager, Neil Allen, who is Daniel Stern. And then a former stage manager whose name is Willie Loman. He's played by Gail Edwards. First of all, just right there, that threesome, so likable. But then when you start getting into the bands, oh my God. So you've got Captain Cloud and the Rainbow Telegraph. And they're, of course, the psychedelic Strawberry Alarm Clock type band. And Captain Cloud is played by the Turtles' Howard Kalin. Then you've got Nada and her 15-member band. And this band is like the Bangles, but like a crazy all-female pop, new wave, punkish extravaganza.
Right.
And then they have this extra member, and this is like the one male member who is Piggy. And Piggy is played by Lee Ving of Fear, the LA punk band Fear.
Right.
And then you've got King Blues. You got a blues guy who's like a sort of a, B.B. King, Muddy Waters type character. And then there's Auden. And Auden is played by Lou Reed. Lou Reed's in this fucking movie. Wow. And he's really funny. And they're trying to get him to come and do the show, but he's this recluse, and it's kind of like maybe they're taking a little bit of the piss out of Bob Dylan.
Yeah, it's definitely
right.
Yeah. But it's funny, and I was surprised at how good Lou Reed was with the comedy stuff. And you get a song, and then the piece de resistance is Reggie Wanker, played by Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah. And that movie is amazing.
It's crazy.
I think you told me. I think you turned me on to that movie.
Yeah, I talked about it briefly because I saw it on some sort of streaming channel.
It was OSI 74, I think.
That's right. That's what it was.
Yeah.
But apparently Malcolm McDowell would not do the movie unless he could sing. But he can't sing.
Right.
And they found this out as they were recording the song. So like, God, what are we going to do? So he sort of speaks the song.
Right.
But it's funny and it works. And there's a lot of different versions of Hoochie Coochie Man. If you like that song, you're going to be quite pleased because they do that one a lot. Anyway, so this big show is going on, but there's a problem. And that is Colin Beverly, who's this evil concert promoter, wants the Saturn Theater. And he's trying to get it. And he's trying to go through Max's squirrely nephew, played by Miles Chapin, who's great, who's so funny. So you've got Ed Begley Jr. playing Colin Beverly. But then on top of that, he's got henchmen. And the henchmen are played by Fabian and Bobby Sherman.
It's amazing.
How fucking great is that? And they're really funny. They've got this nice little banter worked out between all of them doing their yes men thing. But aside from that, you've got even more. You've got John Densmore, the drummer for The Doors, is the drummer for Reggie Wanker's band.
Wow.
Okay. And then you've got Paul Bartel, who I love in everything.
Of course.
Mary Warnoff, Dick Miller, of course.
Yeah. Robert Picardo's in it.
Robert Picardo, Clint Howard, a theme song by Sparks.
Yeah, everybody's.
It's a comic that I used to work with, Barry Diamond, who I've always enjoyed.
It's very surreal too. It goes off very really weird. Like it's weird.
It is insane.
Yeah,
and
it is.
And like it's not rooted whatsoever in reality.
Right.
What's interesting too is that because I was reading up, and then I have they just released it on Blu-ray, and there's like this extra documentary that I think is about 3 hours long.
Really?
Like it's got so many interviews.
Oh wow!
But it's so much fun. So one of the producers was Herbert F. Solow, who was one of the producers on the original Star Trek.
Oh wow! Oh yeah.
I guess Arkush, they didn't really get along too well. And so he wanted to make the movie more realistic.
Grounded, kind of.
Yeah. And Solo wouldn't have that. And so he would just kind of take ideas that he had and, things that were based on reality or his past, because he worked at the Fillmore, and plug that all in to this surreal world. And what you get is really entertaining, really funny. And the jokes come fast and hard. I mean, it's just non-stop. Nice. But I know that most people out there have not seen this movie because for the longest time, it was just almost impossible to see.
Yeah. And I just remember that the soundtrack was in the bargain bins for years. I'm like, what is this movie? I don't remember this being in theaters.
Yeah. I saw it at the Thalia because the Thalia would do failure films or films that went flying. And I saw it they had like a 1 day, Friday, Saturday. That's when they did the comeback trail. They showed Get Crazy. And I was like, I can see this thing. Yeah, it went flying. And so the Thalia would bring films that went flying out of distribution.
That's cool.
They'd show them for one weekend. So I got to see Get Crazy and stuff. He's, by the way, I do recommend the movie, but also he's on Facebook and you can befriend, what's his face, Alan Arkush. He does long, let's say 10, 20-minute videos on his days at the Fillmore, which bands he loves, which films Joey Ramone like he had one where he goes, I would talk with Joey Ramone about which sci-fi films. He had a big collection, and it's literally just Alan Arkush is an old gent. He seems like a perfect, you probably could get him for the show.
We got to get him on.
He's got to go. He has endless stories, and he'll just sit there and he shows you his Ramone CDs. I love the Ramones. Yeah, but Johnny was really into not the 50s ones, but this, and he'll just go on and on. So it is, I definitely recommend he's one of the people to befriend on Facebook because he puts the videos up. And I don't think they're on YouTube. Maybe they're on YouTube too, but they're these just from the diaries of an old hippie dude who directed these amazing movies and stuff.
Yeah. Nice. And the extra documentary that's in Get Crazy in the Blu-ray, it's done as, he's inviting you into his home.
Nice.
And he's it's like this after party for the show. Awesome. He goes back and forth with all these different interviews, and he gets Malcolm McDowell. He goes to Lee Ving. I mean,
really? Wow.
Nice.
And all the original members of NADA. And it's joyous. It really is. And also, if you really want to get kind of a snapshot too of that wonderful 80s time.
Yeah.
This is it.
Awesome.
Nice one, Matt. Nice one.
Yeah.
All right, Ed, back to you, buddy.
Okay. This is one that I just mentioned this to Jim in email today. This is up your street and yet not up your street. This is a movie that I don't know if you guys would ever cover.
What do you know about my street?
Well, this is a horror movie, but it is an underground, avant-garde, gay, straight, hardcore, softcore porn film called Thundercrack. This is out on Synapse.
This is not on my street.
I love my street. I have a passion for this. The thing is,
wasn't that an AC/DC song?
No, well, it's
that's Thunderstruck. I'm sorry.
Basically, the thing that's going on here is it's an old dark house setup. So it's the exact setup that we know from the 1932. They were already making fun of it in 1932 with James Whale.
What year is this?
This is 75. So this is black and white, made on 16 millimeter, made with direct sound. And the thing was, so you've got the 1932 James Whale where they're already making fun of it there. But the same period, like 1 year later, Rocky Horror is probably the most famous old dark house movie, the most people know. This movie, though, because I was talking with Jim in email and we said we didn't talk about John Waters. This is George Kuchar's baby as a writer. He's also an actor in it. He didn't direct it. It's directed by a gentleman named Kurt McDowell, who was a gay underground filmmaker who was one of George's students. And it's a clash. There's a documentary called It Came from Kuchar. There's very few Kuchar movies on DVD. So that's why I wanted to mention this one. There's no movies of George Kuchar. If you're on YouTube and you find Hold Me While I'm Naked, one of my favorite titles, that's his breakthrough work as a solo. He used to work with his brother. They were known as the Kuchar brothers from the Bronx. And they would, amidst this entire universe of avant-garde, Stan Brakhage, people who made films that had no function, they were just form. They weren't really content films. These two guys were the comedians. They were the court jesters of the underground in New York in the 60s. So they incredibly influenced John Waters beyond belief. They worked in 8 millimeter. They worked in 16. Then they worked in 16 sound. They used to do what the classic thing that I guess Kenneth Anger started. You get your record collection and you basically have your record collection as the soundtrack to your movie. Right. Here they're using direct sound, and that's almost weird. They had to augment it for the Blu-ray because sometimes the dialogue is lost, which is weird because George Kuchar wrote, like John Waters, very funny dialogue. So what it is it's a clash of two styles. There's a documentary made by a student of George's where they talk about how Kurt McDowell wanted to make an old dark house. He wanted to make a comedy parody of that horror movie staple, but he also wanted to make a porn film. He wanted to make a film with graphic porn. George Kuchar was like myself. Well, he was sort of more into Catholicism than I am. I'm an ex-Catholic, but he was so anguished by his Catholicism that he was always like worried. He was always guilty, filled with incredible guilt. But he liked to make fun of sex. So he was writing a funny film, a very funny parody of old dark house films. And Kurt McDowell was doing the porn. So what we've got here is, I swear to you, a 2 hour and 40-minute film. This is another big film like Celine and Julie, but very, very different from Celine and Julie. It's in black and white. It's actually in gorgeous black and white at points because George was a master at lighting things. I put this again on my blog. You can look up. He wrote a great book called Reflections from a Cinematic Cesspool about his filmmaking with his brother, who I interviewed, Mike Kuchar, nicest guy in the world, who teaches at San Francisco Art Institute. They used to use their idea for students was don't go to buy actual lighting from a thing. Use your hardware store lighting. Use the lighting in your apartment. So they actually were working on like, what could you do in your house? This is back years before, of course, mini DV cameras and whatever. They were literally telling you, you can make things with your own lamps. You can use duct tape, extension cords, anything you have, you can make a film with. So in a way, that's the kind of aesthetic on display here. But it's also got bizarre eyebrows for the women, which is what Kuchar started that John Waters took over for Divine, having these crazy eyebrows. Having this florid dialogue, because George comes in and he's, what's his name? Something Bing, George Bing or somebody. And he's in love with his animal. He's a gorilla trainer. It's of course a person in a suit and he's going to marry his gorilla. That's the side. So it's got this silly stuff. And then suddenly you see two people, a man and a woman, having graphic sex because they're two people went into a room. Then you see guy, you see girl, you see guy in penis pump and woman with cucumber. The woman who's observing all of this in this kind of Tennessee Williams hothouse environment is an older lady who's played by a middle-aged or a younger woman actually who was made up to look older, who actually is looking at the cucumber. The cucumber is sort of her lover throughout the film. She's watching these people. And then we find the monster. This actually does have, the only thing I could give you guys that has a monster is that at the very end, for about 20 seconds or a minute, we see her son. And we've talked about her son through the whole movie. And we know he has a genital, well, I shouldn't have said, he has a deformity. I gave it away. But he has a deformity that are we going to see him or not? And Kurt McDowell decided, let's give him a glimpse in shadow. Let's do like a silent movie Murnau kind of on the wall thing. And we see the monster at the very end of the movie. And he's already married the gorilla. There's a bunch of things, they tell stories. It is a comedy. It is a comedy.
Is this the kind of movie that has like several different versions, like the softcore and hardcore version?
No, you're right. I rented it at Kim's here in New York, and they had one that had none of the porn. It had the people going in the rooms, and there was no porn. And it was still funny as hell. So it was the movie that George wanted to make. It was the movie that was a funny movie.
It sounds a little bit like, because I know like Andy Milligan made some films like Fleshpot on 42nd Street had some kind of like almost hardcore with Jamie Gillis and stuff. And
you could show it in different places.
But
it was sort of like
Right.
different markets. You could definitely show different versions. So the one that was playing at Kim's, which was this horrible, horrible dub of a dub of a dub on VHS, was just the film. And the film is entertaining. I would honestly say the film is incredibly entertaining. It's a fun movie. The only deficit being that they shot direct sound. And sometimes the actors were not. Some of them are pros. George Kuchar was a great, funny character actor. But a lot of them can't deliver the lines loud enough to be heard on the thing. So they kind of get muted. And even on the Blu-ray, they try. The Blu-ray gives you a whole extra disc of other short films by Kurt McDowell. One interview Kurt McDowell did on local public access in San Francisco. So there's all of this incredible material on the Synapse DVD. But you do see John Waters at this point has already made, he might have even made Female Trouble. He's definitely made Pink Flamingos, but he has said he didn't include them in the lineage of, Cecil B. Demented. I was kind of annoyed at the weird lineage he had in that film. He didn't include Kenneth Anger or the Kuchars, the people who really did. And he put in people like Spike Lee, who I love Spike Lee, but it's like, he didn't influence you, John, and Otto Preminger. And it was sort of a weird assemblage of the tattoos they're wearing of all the filmmakers they love. But the Kuchars definitely influenced John Waters in a heavy degree. And this is the kind of high camp creation that definitely feeds into what John Waters was doing. And I'm sure he saw it at the time.
Soon to be a Netflix TV series, I believe.
Yes,
right?
yes, probably they can do this every week. We'll come back and the other, by the way, the only DVD you can get of any Kuchar brother besides that documentary is Sins of the Flesherpoid, Mike's parody of 50 sci-fi films, which is done. That one is on YouTube too. You can see that film, and that's about 40 minutes long, and it was shot in an apartment in the Bronx. It was shot with minimal effects. They drew murals on the wall. They wear metal headdresses, so they're robots. It's wonderfully no budget, and definitely the early stuff when you see one called The Craven Slut, where a woman is out in the Bronx and she's zapped by a sci-fi, by a UFO saucer. That is influencing John Waters incredibly, because that was done in like 67, 66. So this sort of stuff, I'm just promoing Thundercrack because it's one you guys can actually lay hands on for sure on DVD. And if you want to see the weirdest porn you can see, because it's actually an old dark house comedy that runs about under 2 hours with all this other porn. That's why the film runs 2 hours and 40 minutes. He didn't cut the scenes. He actually had the actors, including his sister, Kurt McDowell's sister Melinda, who presented it at an anthology, told us what it would be like, what it was like being directed by her brother while she performed a hardcore sex scene. That doesn't happen too often. So
wow.
There you go.
It's all in the family.
Yes, there you go. So
Happy Thanksgiving.
It's got a monster in it. It's the only movie I might have for you guys that actually I know has a monster at the end. So
all right.
It's got a monster.
It's got a monster.
All right, Ed. Thank you. That's awesome.
It's a tough one to follow, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try here. Because to call this an independently produced straight to video is actually being generous, because this looks like a home video, but it does have a reputation, so I do think it belongs here. And it's called Black Devil Doll from Hell.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And this is from 1984. And I mean, I had a camcorder in 1984, and this is sort of like what I was doing with my camcorder, right? It's like, it looks, it's on that level. It's an all-black cast created by a man named Chester Novell Turner. Mm-hmm. And there are a couple of different cuts. It's not easy to find, but we are talking amateur. I mean, which like there are names in the credits of all these people who edited it and scored it. But like, I'm like the people actually worked on this thing, because it looks for all the world like you could have just done this in your house. Right. But it also belongs to the subgenre of evil ventriloquist dummy movies. Now, the entire cast is African-American, and it concerns a woman who buys a black ventriloquist dummy from a curio shop, and he's got dreadlocks, and the owner of the curio shop tells her that this is a special doll that will grant your wish, and everybody that she sold it to, it's granted their wish, but then afterward, it always makes it back to the shop. So it's like, all right. So the woman brings it, the woman brings it home, and before too long, she finds herself tied to her bed with this dummy coming to life, and of its own accord, and proceeding to rape her. I mean, a lot of it is frankly pretty uncomfortable because it's like it's straight to video and you feel like you're sort of there, you know, it's like,
right.
because it's sort of squeamish. But then it gets into this category of like, there's a couple of lines of dialogue that I just had to write down.
Go. Give it to me.
Untie me, you wooden-headed bastard.
That's good.
Like, where else are you going to see that? You know?
Right.
So then ultimately, I mean, you know, it's of course, as fate would have it, she ends up actually getting off on the experience like she wouldn't believe. And then she becomes sexually promiscuous and goes out and finds other lovers, but none of them can compare to the dummy. So she's begging for the dummy to be with her again, where she confesses to him. And again, I had to write this down. I've been with men several times, to be exact.
That's funny.
Well, but I don't know if it was intentional.
That's I don't
know, but it works.
It's like, yeah.
The filmmaker is also known for a kind of a follow-up movie called Tales from the Quaded Zone, which features, I think, the same actress, and it's kind of like a anthology thing. It's like, I think it's two stories. She's telling stories. I've not seen either of these, but I know of these films. Yeah.
Well, he ended up marrying that actress, and this was supposed to be a part of that portmanteau, but it was too long, so he made it into a feature in and of itself.
He had to break it apart. Yeah,
it's just too good. It's too massive of a story.
Right.
There was a longer version, but apparently the shorter version is better. And of course, it has a wraparound where, you know, the doll makes its way back to the curio shop, and the woman is selling it to another woman with the same spiel.
Thanks, James. Thanks for ruining it.
Spoiler. No, Shock Cinema magazine. Shock Cinema reviewed the movie in 1991, writing that it revels unashamedly in its own misogynistic mindset and utter incompetency. And I can't imagine an uglier, more unbelievably inept piece of rot gut. Difficult to endure, impossible to forget, and loads of fun to discuss afterwards, sort of like bragging about battle wounds.
Wow. Nice.
So, I mean, I don't think this thing is even available on YouTube. I mean, I think
it may be on.
I've seen it on DVD or Blu-ray.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the gray market copies. But I thought it was coming out, actually.
Monsterpalooza was marketing, and I remember this too. They were marketing a kind of a remake from the late 1990s.
Really?
Yeah,
remake.
Where instead of dreadlocks, the dummy had like an afro. And was just a little bit more animated, and they had more of a budget.
Okay.
So that one is probably worth seeking out too. But this one,
I want the original.
The original is something to behold. I cannot say with a clear conscience that I recommend it. but
we expect that from you, James.
Yes. Cult. Yes.
Wow, that's a good one.
Wow.
Yeah, good one.
There you go.
Oh, I don't know how I can follow that one, James. But I will say I can recommend this one, even though it's a bit sick and twisted. I mentioned some animators today. There's another one, famous animator. His name is Jans Funkmeyer, and he's from Prague, and he has done a lot of kind of funky, twisted animated films. He started out
great.
In 64 into the 70s. He did a film in 1989 called Darkness, Light, Darkness. And it's kind of a cult film because of the topic. All of his stuff kind of deals with sarcasm, irony, dark humor. I mean, Matt, it's right up your alley. You know,
yes, it is.
All this stuff. But this one particular one, the animation is amazing. Clay animation, but there's also some real stuff in this. I'll give you an example. It starts out, there's this room, and in walks this hand. It's a clay animated hand. And slowly but surely, there's a knock at the door, and the hand allows something to come in, and it's a couple of eyeballs that come in, and the eyeballs get onto the hand, and slowly but surely other parts and pieces of a body or a head kind of come on in, and there's like this giant tongue that animated coming into, and it goes into the mouth, and it's weird because it's like a real tongue with clay, and then there's teeth, and as parts of this creature, this thing, come in through the door, there's like another hand, the head and feet, and so you've got this funky head with feet sticking out of it, and then there's a bang at the door, and all the parts of this creature like freaking out because there's something that's on the other side of the door that they're very afraid of, and they don't want to open the door, and one of them gets like a big bucket of cold water, and they open the door and throw it on whatever that item is, and then this something else, then this thing comes in now that it's been cooled off, and now it's kind of flaccid, comes in. Anyway, there's other parts of this creature or body that come in and basically have a body created inside this small room. It's really weird. It's twisted, and you can find it on YouTube. And it is considered a cult classic.
What is it called again?
Again, it's called Darkness, Light, Darkness from 1989 by Jan Svankmajer.
I love his stuff. I really do.
Great.
He did a movie, Faust, which is
yes,
wonderful.
But he's an incredibly talented filmmaker. Fun stuff, twisted, not really long. It's anywhere between 7 to 8 minutes. I think you would like it.
Wow,
cool.
Yeah, I'm there.
Nice.
Cool.
All right, Sean.
Okay, this one's a pretty crazy, bizarre movie from 1981. I don't know how many people know about this, but it's called a couple different titles. The main one it's known for is called Circle of Power. It's also known as Brainwash, directed by Bobby Roth. And it's based on a book called The Pit, A Group Encounter Defiled. And it's basically Yvette Mimieux is the head of this big corporation called Mystique.
Oh.
And she has gathered together all these top executives from her company along with their wives for this executive training development weekend to spend at this mansion. They're going to stay here, and it's like this kind of group awareness training, like an EST kind of thing. And it's like they all work for this ad agency, this Mystique. And basically the whole point of this is like they sign away all their rights to this thing because they're going to put these top executives through this hardcore training where they break down all their personal barriers and all their insecurities, and to just become the best of what you are, and no bullshit. It's like to be, look for the truth in you. And it's just this kind of physical and psychological torture and abuse that they put these people through. It's like this big group, session. And each day they go through this crazy shit. There's one where like, you have to know, in order to know what, to know what life is, you have to know what death is. So when they put one person in a coffin, and close the coffin, they just have to stay there until they understand and appreciate life, or one guy they strip naked and put him in a cage and feed him scraps of food, and like you have to how does he deal with that? Be your own man, and it's consciousness raising, but it's this sadistic manipulation. And Christopher
takes me back to my time in the Boy Scouts.
Yeah, and Christopher Allport plays one of these executives who's like, is not going to take this. This is bullshit. He wants to leave, but it's all like it's his rebellion part of the plan. Is what like Yvette Mimieux is great. She is like this strict disciplinarian, and she's got all these like burly henchmen guys who like keep the group in line. It's just really fascinating. And also during all of this, you have these like servants and maids who work there, and they kind of like, they're just, they serve the food and cook and keep the place clean, but they kind of watch on monitors all the stuff that goes on, and just like crazy motherfuckers, just watching this go by. And, the people involved in this, they get no bathroom breaks for all this constant exercise until they're like, they have to drop dead. And it's just a kind of this battle of wits between Christopher Allport ultimately and Yvette Mimieux, and who never backs down and who never, sways. But it's really interesting. I don't think it's ever been released on DVD or Blu-ray. And again, it's loosely based on a book that was a real thing where this guy exposed this kind of bullshit executive training that was happening like in the 70s, I think.
So based on a book about the real thing.
About a real incident, about this real thing. Yeah. John Considine, Leo Rossi, Cindy Pickett, Fran Ryan, really great cast of character actors in it. And it's really worth seeing. I think it was maybe the last feature film that Miu did. She did a lot of TV after that before just recently, unfortunately, passing away. But it's really fascinating. 1981. It's also known as just Brainwash. But it was originally called Circle of Power. It's on YouTube. That's where you can check it out. That's where I saw it, but definitely worth checking out. It's pretty nuts. Yeah.
Cool. Nice one, Sean.
All right.
All right, Matt.
All right. Well, my film is, I guess you would call it sort of a cult film staple. It's also from 1982. I was talking about Paul Bartel. And this is a film written, directed, and starring him and Mary Wernoff. It's Eating Raoul.
Love that movie.
We all love Eating Raoul.
Yes.
Now, you know what? I hadn't seen this movie in years. And I remember seeing it when I was younger. And I remember enjoying it. But when I recently saw it, it was way funnier than I remember. Yeah. And this is the type of movie that could never be made now. There are so many un-PC things in this thing, but it's funny. It's really funny. And so the plot is you got Paul Bartel, who's Paul Bland, and he's this wine snob, and he works at this wine shop, and he's always yelling at the customers. And his wife is Mary Wernoff at her hottest.
Oh my God. I think this may have been the first movie I saw Mary Wernoff.
Oh my God. She's a nurse. Nurse.
Oh, she's so hot.
And anyway, Paul has one of these, he has a conniption at work and he's fired. And now they don't have enough money they wanted to open a restaurant. And they have a real strange relationship. They're not into sex at all. They sleep in separate twin beds. And they're married and they love each other, but they're just not into sex at all. But in their building, there are all these swinger parties.
Right.
And so one night, a drunk swinger comes in and starts manhandling Mary. And one thing leads to another. And Paul hits him with a frying pan and accidentally kills him.
Right.
Now, when he kills this guy, they don't really spend too much time worrying about it, or feeling bad about it. They just oh, fuck it, we got to get rid of this guy. All right. And they dispose of him. And then this happens again. Another swinger guy comes along and they kill him and they take the money from these guys. And they realize they can make a lot of money by just killing what they call rich perverts. And so they decide they're going to host dominatrix parties to lure these guys in. And that's how they do it. Well, at one point, Paul is worried that his wine collection is going to be stolen. So he has a locksmith come in, and that's Raul Mendoza, who is played by Robert Beltran. And for Star Trek fans, he's Chakotay.
Also from Night of the Comet.
There you go. Yes, that's right. And he gets wise to what they're doing. And then he is now part of their operation, but he starts falling for Mary. And after she smokes some pot, she loosens up and has sex with him. And it causes a problem because now he's completely head over heels for her, but she doesn't want to leave Paul.
Right.
She loves him. So anyway, things get more and more complicated, and I don't want to give away the ending, but you might already know what that is. But it's so funny.
And that's also a movie that movie, it works because the tone is just right.
It's just
something very hard to get right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It would fall apart if you didn't hit that sweet spot.
Yes. And also I have a special connection to that movie.
Do you really?
My wife and I do, because the woman who plays Doris the dominatrix.
Yes, that's right.
Susan Sager. Is our tax accountant.
Oh my God.
No.
Wow. Nice.
Wow.
I'm sure you never think of that when you go to her office. You never think of her in the dominatrix outfit.
Only in Hollywood, man.
We got to get her on the
show. We've talked about it, and she's it's pretty funny. But yeah, no, it's a great movie.
It's so good. And then you also got Ed Begley Jr. You got Buck Henry.
Yeah.
It was one that I revisited And I was just blown away at how enjoyable from the moment it starts to the end.
Yeah.
And Paul Bartel and Mary Wernoff, their chemistry between each other.
I know, yeah.
It's a natural comedy team.
It really is.
Yeah. It's interesting. His stuff, TCM keeps showing private parts, not the Howard Stern, but the Paul Bartel, which is creepy as hell, yet very funny. Yeah. It actually has a weird moment where someone yells at someone, and this is years before Scorsese's film, or I think that was based on a novel. Alice doesn't live here anymore. And I was like, did that come from this movie, oddly enough? Or is it just synchronicity? Because he used to know Scorsese's in, the second Cannonball? Scorsese acts in one of Bartel's.
Maybe.
This is the sequel to the one with David Carradine playing Frankenstein, the second one. Yeah. So they all knew each other, and it's just also the Secret Cinema, that short, which I think you can find online.
Oh yeah,
and you can also find the bad remake he made for Spielberg, which is Happy. I really can't.
Oh, that was the one on Amazing Stories or whatever.
Yeah, he totally sold it out because it's about a woman seeing her own life, and the whole thing is about it. It's about pretty depressing. And she goes to see it. You see your own life projected in a movie theater, and his original is really radical and cool. It's like the Kuchar's. It's this funny underground film, and then Spielberg had to make it into a sitcom, and they do it like Capra, and it's like no, that's not the point. But as a filmmaker, it's sad that he ended up doing mostly Lust in the Dust, like works for hire.
He really films. For a while there, he was really making his own kind of mark with his own really unique different movies. You're right. Yeah.
I guess the last one is that Scenes from the Class Struggle in Beverly Hills, which TCM shows too. That's really fun. And then then he was doing, he did one with a racetrack robbery with Tim Conway or something. It's like The Long Shot. It's just a standard comedy with a bunch of comedians.
It kind of went mainstream, like you said, more like just a director for hire kind of.
I guess he needed the money, so
I would have loved to have seen a series of comedies with Paul Bartel and Mary Wernoff. Like this
even those
weird,
same characters, like
offbeat counterculture Mon Pa Kettle,
Totally.
So good.
Well, guys, this has been so much fun. I mean, we've been talking about all kinds of really cool, weird cult films. This has been great.
Yeah. Once again, I want to watch every single one of them.
Yeah. Me too.
But it's like we could go on and on. There's so many. So what do you say we just do a quick lightning round? Just throw out a few titles and save the rest of our list for the next time we do this. But let's do a lightning round. Okay, so Ed, why don't you just give me a couple quick ones there?
I'll give you 2 or 3 quickies. 2 of these are on one of them completely out of print. This is a harder artist to get his stuff in America. I just completed a bunch of shows on the French satirist Bertrand Blier. He's best known for Going Places, which is in print from Kino. You can get that one. There's a whole debate about whether or not he's PC or un-PC. His films are thought of as sexist, and they just remade that terrible John Turturro movie. He remade Going Places as his Jesus Rolls movie. Just see the original one, The Going Places, which is wonderful. But this filmmaker made a bunch of other films that you unfortunately can only really find floating around the torrents that are these surreal fantasy films. One called Kamos, that's a reaction to feminism, and one called Merci la Vie with Charlotte Gainsbourg that is absolutely lovely, but that one is harder to find because it was never available in America with subtitles. I have a much easier one to find, and I believe it's all on YouTube, or you can at least get a Warner Archive copy. The Swinger by George Sidney. I did a whole series of episodes about Anne Margaret too. It's one of my favorites of all time. Sure. I have the soundtrack is here. This is the soundtrack if you can see it. But anyway, that's a film that the director George Sidney, who was an MGM director, and he liked to have people sing to the camera. So he did Anchors Away, where Gene Kelly and Frank Sinatra sing to the camera. Pal Joey, where Kim Novak sings to the camera. Right. He was obsessed because he had been a screener. So in this film, in Bye Bye Birdie, what's the beginning? He created the opening and close it. It wasn't in the play where she sings to the camera. Then he did it again in Viva Las Vegas, where Elvis, they do What I Say to each other. But The Swinger is a lot of Anne Margaret singing to the camera, wearing hot outfits. And it's basically George Sidney, I'm not saying much out of school here, clearly had a crush on her. He was an older man. He was happily married. He never cheated on his wife that I know of, but he was madly in love just from the evidence in his film.
Who isn't?
How can you not be?
The Swinger in 1966 begins with a Batman-like thing and ends with her on a swing, and it goes pow, pow, pow. They're really trying to, and basically it's her in many, many outfits. He has one thing, which I read somewhere in one of the books about her, took a week to film. He took an entire week of his shoot to have Anne Margaret go to the LA version of Bloomingdale's or something and try on hats. And it's like, Jesus Christ, And the most famous scene, which we'll link to other movies that are cult in their own way, is her as a human paintbrush. She's in a hippie commune, and they use her as a human paintbrush. This was in Playboy magazine. This is the beginning of the wet and messy fetish. It's later copied unbelievably, and I'm sure he'd seen it by Ken Russell and Tommy when she's in the scene with the beans.
Oh, yes, right.
That's completely a takeoff. And then years later, without the beans and without any, I think, imagination, Baz Luhrmann in Moulin Rouge puts Nicole Kidman in a red hair, and he has her roll around on a bed. And I was like, yeah, this is the same thing, but it's a lot less interesting than George Sidney and Uncle Ken's version of it. But that's Moulin Rouge and everything. Those were the ones I wanted to get to quickly. And that's the only other one I would say it completely out of left field, which has nothing to do with horror movies. I did a whole series of episodes about the guy who died, Yugoslavian filmmaker Dusan Makavejev. And I like films that don't fit into any one category. He made an insane film that Criterion has put out, and you could probably find it on the Criterion channel, WR Mysteries of the Organism, which is a late 60s like explosion of a story about the guy, Wilhelm Reich, who was the guy, they destroyed all his books, etc. So part of it's a documentary about him. Part of it is about a young woman in Yugoslavia being a freedom fighter who was ultimately felled by this guy who's a proud Russian. And then there's a third part where we're in New York City and we see Al Goldstein and we see Jackie Curtis, the Warhol superstar, walking down 42nd Street. So it's three separate movies. It's actually a documentary, a fiction film, and a completely just another documentary about New York City and sex at that time, sexual mores. So that's one you can. I'm trying to stick here, except for the one what's his name, Bertrand Blier. Those are available. You can get them from Criterion. And I'm sure the swinger, by the way, with the swinger paintbrush scene, somebody has a beta copy they put up on YouTube of a 6-minute scene. It's a 1.5-minute scene. And literally somebody somewhere taped it from WGN in Chicago one night. And it was much longer. Somehow there's an outtake. Wow. And that we're talking about obsessive fans. So he decided to share that years ago. So those are my quick takes. Those are my quick takes.
She's nice. So hot that I was attracted. I was attracted to the cartoon version of her in the Flintstones.
Yes. And that was because Sidney knew, I've talked about this with Jim, Sidney was part of the Hanna-Barbera beginnings. Like he funded Hanna-Barbera. George Sidney, he got her onto the Flintstones. No, I did about 7 episodes on the FUNHOUSE because I got all her specials. Her specials were directed by David Winters, who did those campy like Raquel Welch and Nancy Sinatra specials. So they are high camp, all shot in LA, out in the streets of LA, unbelievably wonderful camp. You talk about and literally it is the Lola Heatherton thing from SCTV. She's only seen with, I would say they're male dancers. I don't want to say they're, I don't want to make a supposition about their preference, but they all look like the Lola Heatherton, Jewel Holmeyer dancers. In every episode, they're amazing specials to watch, and some pieces of them are on YouTube. They're wonderful. Nice. So that would be my quick takes.
Cool. Nice. Cool. All right, James.
Talking about how some directors are just cult directors, no matter what they do. One of them being Ralph Bakshi, whose movies are sort of a piece, and many of them are very dated now. Fritz the Cat is the one in particular I would single out from 1972, based on the Crumb comic. I was always very intrigued as a kid looking at the poster. For one thing, an X-rated cartoon. As a kid, it's like the mind boggles. It's fact, it's different now with South Park and anything that you can get. Right. But back then it was new and it was different. Yeah. Looking at it now, it's very, very much a commentary of its time. Yes. And even then, Bakshi was making a kind of a different point or series of points than I think Crumb intended to make, because they were a little bit, the satiric points were a little bit different. Anyway, Bakshi, all of his movies, and everything after that, Heavy Traffic, American
Coonskin,
which now, and even for the Cat, it does have racial. I mean, all the black characters, you've got Jewish characters, and there's a lot of stereotyping. Another cult filmmaker, Peter Greenaway. And
yes.
The only film I have to admit, the only film of his that I've seen was sort of the breakthrough, The Cook, the Thief, His Wife and Her Lover from 1989, where it's an amazing movie. I mean, it's
Helen Mirren.
Mirren, married to, is it Michelle Gambon or Michael Gambon?
Michael Gambon, yeah.
Michael Gambon, who's this mafioso restaurateur, cruel as all hell and sadistic, and she's abused by him left and right. And somehow she dares to have an affair with someone and suffers the consequences. It's Tim Roth, early role for him, as one of his goons. Amazingly stylized, really, really dark. And even when I saw it in a theater back then, I was thinking, if Hitchcock were alive, I think he would have appreciated the juxtaposition of violence, death, and food and sex. You know, because they were all intertwined. And then finally, to come full circle on killing Bambi, I will bring up a 1968 short by a filmmaker named Marv Newland, called Bambi Meets Godzilla, which everybody's seen it. If you haven't seen it, YouTube it. But it's a joke. It's a little animated joke. And the reason everybody remembers Marv Newland's name,
the credit,
that's part of the joke in the credit.
Marv Newland, produced by Mrs. and Mrs. Newland.
I actually had a garage kit, a single resin piece that was a pen holder. There was a cup. There was Godzilla's foot with Bambi's remains underneath the foot.
That's great. That would be a great little maquette. Yeah.
So that's good.
Great.
Oh man, James, nice. I saw that on Creature Features in Northern California, and they happened to show it. It was a big deal. It was a big deal because they were showing it between Godzilla versus the Smog Monster and the Godzilla versus the Thing. And I remember being all excited, thinking I'm going to be seeing this big, well, I don't know how
massive fight between Bambi and Godzilla.
Let's just say that I was a little disappointed, but it was still fun.
It's funny.
Yeah, but it's kind of genius in its own way. It's great.
Okay, James, to follow you along the same lines of animation and talk about quirky, funky, twisted, and disturbed and cult classics. From 1986, Street of Crocodiles by the Brothers Quay. This is a really weird, it's like a 20-minute film. If you want to talk about a film that is it's artistically, it's just brilliant, but using like screws and dust particles and just lighting and doll parts and stuff. It's so freaking weird. Imagine it's like a puppet is recently freed and the strings from his strings, and he gets to explore this dusty commercial world. It's really weird, really twisted, really well done. And then another great animated film from 1989, actually the Academy Award winner, Balance, from Christoph and Wolfgang Larsen.
That one.
That's a great one. It's so cool. And again, talk about learning about cooperation and trying to live with your neighbor.
Right.
This, if you haven't seen this, you can check this out on YouTube from 1989. Balance. It's stop motion animation. Imagine there's these 5 ghostly figures all living on this suspended plank, in space, and they're all kind of standing there. And if one moves a couple feet, the whole plank starts to tilt. And so the others have to move, they have to move to the other side so the plank can constantly be in balance. Mysteriously, there's like this musical device that shows up one day, and they're all kind of curious. They want to see what it is and listen to it. But one becomes a little more, I like it more for myself. And this is all done without dialogue. So he kind of goes further on the platform to make this device kind of slide towards him. Well, the others can't go there because then they're going to make the whole plank fall. So they have to move to the back. But then you have this thing where each one of them tries to do something to get this musical device until you get to the point where, if you don't work together and balance it, you can destroy it for everybody. So it's a great, great animated film. Not too long, about 7 or 8 minutes, but I strongly suggest you check it out from 1989.
Thanks for doing.
Very good.
Okay, here's a couple. This is one that I think I've mentioned this movie before, but I just love it. And it finally came out on Blu-ray, and it's great. It's one of my favorite monster films from the 80s that not many people talk about. 1987, The Kindred.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
This is released by Synapse, directed by Stephen Carpenter and Jeff Obrow. They did The Dorm That Dripped Blood and a movie called The Power from the 80s. This is a great movie. It's an old-fashioned kind of mad scientist monster movie, but you got Rod Steiger and Kim Hunter in it. It's basically, there's a scientist who's like a professor, and he's got these college students, and his dying mother, who's a geneticist, who's played by Kim Hunter, she's on her deathbed in the hospital, and she's like, you got to go to my cabin and get rid of all my papers. I was experimenting on something, and you have to just get rid of it. And also, by the way, you had a brother. And that's all she tells him. Yeah. and meanwhile, Rod Steiger is this other kind of rival scientist who kind of wants to get Kim Hunter's experiments. She's ashamed of them. She went too far, but he's like, no, I want to take this. Basically, from her son's DNA, she created like kind of a spliced together, mutant creature that is kind of like the brother of this guy. And it's this hideous tentacled thing that lives under the cabin in the woods. And so the professor, of course, has taken his college group of kids. They're not even kids, they're like college age, to this place to clean out the cabin, not realizing that there's this creature there. And Rod Steiger basically is killing off people to get to it. And Rod Steiger has this mysterious assistant played by Amanda Pays, who, the hottest labesses you've ever seen. But there's a little secret with going on with her too. And
don't tell us too much.
No, I won't. But it is a well acted. You got in addition to David Allen Brooks, Talia Balsam, everybody's really, all the characters are actually really good, and it's well acted. It's not like a teenager's getting knocked off kind of movie. It's really well done, but the effects are great. Anthony is the monster, and he's really cool. He kind of grows and really good. And Rod Steiger, everything Rod Steiger, he just gives it 110%. I mean, he acts in it like he's in all of his classic movies. I mean, he's fantastic. As he's getting slapped with goo.
Professionalism.
It's great. So that's a great. It's called The Kindred. It's on Blu-ray from Synapse. Check it out. I would also say another movie that maybe I've mentioned before, but I love a movie that was kind of a staple on HBO in the late 70s, early 80s. From 1974, Homebodies. This is a group of pensioners, all these old folks who basically resort to murder when their old tenement building is about to be torn down to make way for this big fancy apartment building or something. And so this building's being built, and they kind of start sabotaging the construction of the building. The guys are falling off of girders from high above, and the woman who's coming by to kind of give their notice, like, you got to get out of here. They kill her, and it's basically all these old folks, but it's black comedy. But some of the murders are really gruesome, and it's really well done.
I've never seen this.
Oh, it's great. It's also just released by Kino. Paula Truman is the main kind of woman. She's like this little pixie-faced, older woman who kind of like runs the gang. These names might not sound familiar to you, but when you see these actors,
that
like
guy,
Peter Bracco, Ruth McDivitt, who was Miss Emily in Kolchak, William Hansen, Ian Wolfe, all these old character actors, and they're great. And they all establish the characters really well of why they need to stay in this building. They can't, they need to live here. This is their lives, and it's great. It's like I said, it's dark humor, really fun, and really gruesome. So check it out, Homebodies.
All right, okay. Cool. Well, I don't know if we've ever really talked about these films. I know we might have touched on them. I know James knows these movies, but it's the Hanzo the Razor series, starring Shintaro Katsu, who is best known for Zatoichi. And this was another creation of his. And this is a Edo period cop who really, believes in justice, and, he's going to fight for right and stop corruption. But he's also this weirdo who is obsessed with sex, and to the point where what he does is to make his giant penis more knobbly, I guess, more ribbed, he will penetrate a bag of rice, raw rice, through a hole in the bag, and just do all, and then he'll bang it with a piece of wood and like all this stuff to make this the ultimate penis machine, right? And
it's almost as if Katsu was thinking, okay, what can I do that's diametrically opposed to Zatoichi? Because women throw themselves to Zatoichi, but he's all like,
he never touches them. Yeah,
he's demure and he's blind. This guy not only can see, but he'll fuck anything that moves.
Well, he will, and he also uses it for his interrogations. Right. And so there'll be some woman who is, not giving up the information. He'll start having his way with her, and at first she's, it's rape. It's really rape. And but then he'll stop because she starts to get into it. Yeah. And then he's like, why are you stopping? I won't keep going unless you give me the information. No, you must. And then he'll do it a little bit more. And then, all right, and then he'll stop. Okay.
That's why, and that's why they call him the Razor.
The Razor. And that is it's so terrible and wrong.
Yeah.
But they certainly are something to behold, because it's this weird mixture of exploitation, mixed with Chanbara, mixed with
what's that? I'll ask what's that? What's Chanbara?
Chanbara would be like any kind of like swordplay movie.
Okay.
And then you take that and then you add a little bit of like almost like James Bond, because when he's holed up in his house and people are coming to get him, he's got all these things rigged up all over the house. Press a lever and something will drop out of the ceiling. You know what? There's no way I can defend these movies. I'm just saying that right off the bat. But
they're perfect. Watch them along with Thundercrack, and you're
yes, maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah. And what year are those? What period is that? When did they make the movies?
This is the 70s, early 70s.
Okay.
Yeah. So this other thing that I want to talk about is a movie that I've never seen, but I've always heard jokes made about it. And I know there's a friend of ours who has even props from this movie in his house. But the movie I'm talking about is Heart Beeps.
Oh, I've seen that.
So
paid for that.
I have never seen this. And what I really want to know from you guys, because this was also directed by Alan Arkish.
I know.
Wow. Right.
I have it on DVD.
I paid for it. Yeah, I saw it in the theater. Yeah.
It was one of those bargain things that like the, one of those, no, it's.
I want to know. What I want to know is, especially like now.
Yeah.
Looking, going back to it now, is it better? Is it the same?
I haven't gone back to it. I saw it in a theater, and I just remember that I was into Andy Kaufman, and it was him doing a completely commercial project. I just remember it almost meant, I almost felt like, geez, this is for children. Why am I in this theater? This was a children's movie.
It's odd. It's very odd. And it's not, first of all, it's right. It's not an Andy Kaufman movie at all.
Yeah.
It could have been anybody playing that part in that. I mean, he kind of is doing his Latka thing a little bit, but it's the makeup is very strange. Bernadette Peters and you got this other kind of wisecracking robot with a cigar.
I remember seeing clips of that.
It's too good. The movie's it's kind of fascinating to watch because it's so odd, but it kind of just sits there and it's strange. I mean, it's not. I would say it doesn't exactly zoom by. It's all kind of it's childish and kind of stagnant and weird. It was notorious because it was a big bomb,
giant bomb.
The idea is kind of interesting.
Is it?
But I mean, maybe not. I guess the title is the cleverest thing in the movie.
It
really.
Exactly.
Well, they had also gotten John Williams to do the score. At a time when he was on the top of his form with all the Spielberg and Star Wars.
It had some money. I mean, it had.
And the cast. I'm looking at the cast right now.
Yeah.
Randy Quaid, Christopher Guest.
Was it Universal? Because I think it's in the same. It seemed like it was the same era of like Incredible Shrinking Woman, like that kind of.
Oh wow!
That kind of era.
Yeah, it's Universal. It's Universal. Yeah, but you also have Mary Warnoff and Paul Bartel.
Gosh, I haven't seen it in quite a while.
And Jerry Garcia.
Wow!
Wow!
Yeah, it's pretty odd. I think it's the kind of movie that maybe now people want it to be a cult film, but it doesn't really. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's worth. I haven't seen quite a while, but
our friend Wally Wingert, I believe, does he have the full costume? Or does he have?
I think so, right?
And
because
and understand he is a diehard Andy Kaufman fan.
Yeah.
And Sean, wouldn't you say this is like? Part of me feels like it was also at the time when, a pitch was made. And the concept, about these robots, and sci-fi is big, so we have these robot costumes, and they're getting out, and it's like it was sold, as one thing. But when it actually came to doing the script, I think people may have signed on to do it before, everything was fleshed out.
It's just kind of like I can't remember is it like the they lose their programming or something like
I forgot the plot almost entirely.
They're robots that break their programming and then fall in love, and they try to escape from.
There's this kind of like battle robot, like just tank kind of robot that's chasing them for the
I think it was also a Christmas
crime buster.
It's so bizarre. But
Matt, is that cult status? And there are people
I would say it's cult because
it is. Yeah,
it would have to be because
it's cult, but it's not a
And that's like almost saying that know that there are a group of people.
Sure.
Somebody.
Well, it's like saying that Megaforce is cult.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
Exactly.
And I really wanted to know what you guys thought of this. And then I was doing research, and it turns out, from what I'm reading here, Sigourney Weaver was offered a role in it because she wanted to work with Andy Kaufman.
Really?
Her agent persuaded her to turn it down.
How smart.
How great of an agent is that?
Dodge that bullet.
Really. But yeah, I was just curious because it's, you never know. Like one of these movies, sometimes, you talk to someone, they go, oh no, that's really good. And you should revisit it.
Well,
it was like a Christmas release, I think, too, if I'm not mistaken. I believe. And then it was one of those movies where like a Superman movie, or like you said, like a Spielberg Lucas movie is playing in the big theater. I saw it at the Astoria that had a big theater, and then it had the balcony broken into 3, and Heartbeats was in one of the balcony into 3. So you could see the big film, or you could go see this crappy little film. And I was in Eddie Kaufman guy. So let me check it out. I saw that thing he made. There's a photo that goes around a lot on Facebook of him. They're doing their costume testing. It's Pryor, him, and Marty Feldman. And that's that other film that's completely forgettable, In God We Trust. It's a Marty Feldman directed film, and it has Kaufman and Richard Pryor, and it's not good. It's terrible.
Like what's the other one? Holy Moses? With
the other one. And then there's that amazing Yellowbeard. It's like everyone.
They have like great people in it, but they're duds.
Everyone is in that movie. Bad. Yeah.
Well, thanks for getting me through this. And setting me on the right path.
I think it's that Heartbeat is that kind of movie where you think, oh, it's going to be like a so bad, it's good kind of fun time. Like, no, it's not.
In fact, I'll go out on a limb and say, listeners, I think that's one that you could just not see.
But I bet you there's some Heartbeat champions out there. Who knows? They put out action figures. Would you buy them?
No.
Is there a convention somewhere?
If you're Andy Kaufman completist, maybe.
There's there's an amazing, this is not a cult movie, please don't go see this either, but I saw it on Channel 11 locally here years ago. Another Bernadette Peters movie that got buried was her and Gabe Kaplan, Tulips. They're both suicidal lovers who fall in love when they're going to commit suicide on the same bridge. And it was this thing where for a moment they gave, Gabriel Kaplan was in that basketball, I can't remember his name was Fast Break or something.
He had his 15 minutes of fame.
And he got, and poor Bernadette Peters, like she's got Steve Martin, Pennies from Heaven, which is wonderful. She's got little bits in like Long Goodbye. She's in Annie.
I always love
She's wonderful, but I mean the movies where she's a star are like Heartbeats and Tulips.
Those
are the two movies where she's a star.
Remember she did a lot of Broadway stuff.
That's
where
and The Longest Yard. Let's not forget.
Yes, she's got that with the beehive. She's got the beehive.
That's right. Do you ever find any spiders in that?
Yeah,
that's what he asked her.
Well, this has been great.
It has.
This has been fun. I'd say I'd be interested in seeing all. I'd be interested in seeing all of these except Heartbeats again. Hey, Ed, thank you so much for being with us, man. It's been such a joy.
Thank you. I'm very flattered, as I say it, to be called upon, and I love sharing it. I learned as a listener of your show. I learned more about your obsessions, and even in the prequel, particularly when we talk at the but I learned all kinds of things about what you guys dig outside of monster movies.
Yeah, you're just an unstoppable fountain of cinematic knowledge, man. I'm telling you, it's like
of course, a tidal wave. Trivia and information.
Where can our listeners listen to your spouting information?
Oh, well, the show airs weekly. We air in New York Public Access. I'm still on Access because I can do what I want with copyrighted footage, whereas on YouTube and we know on the internet, it's you can do anything basically on Public Access, nigh short of showing explicit materials, either sexual or violent. But I can still show movies. I can break down things. I can show things from different studios. I'm showing things that we've gotten with subtitles from the torrents that we can get, show amazingly rare movies. So it's on a thing called Manhattan Neighbor Network, and we're on mnn.org Saturday nights right after Saturday Night Live here in New York, but you guys would see it at like 10 o'clock. It's on when we're on in New York at 1 a.m. late Saturday night, and you go to the Spirit channel, which is funny because I don't show anything religious, but I also do maintain the site which gives you all this info, mediafunhouse.com, and I have mediafunhouse.blogspot.com, which I put all these like interviews with aging actors and blah, blah, blah. And also I do have clips on YouTube, but I haven't really tended to that in 2 or 3 years. The last one was Alan Rudolph about 2 years ago. So I need to put some more clips up on there. But yeah, Media Funhouse, Ed Grant, you'll find all kinds of stuff on the web. So thank you for the chance to do the plug.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ed. We look forward to having you back here.
I would love it. Volume 3. I mean, there's a bunch more movies.
Yeah.
It'll be a trilogy.
Yes, please.
Yes, the Revenge of the in 3D. This one has to be in 3D because it's 3D. Cult movies in 3D. So.
Right.
Well, Ed, what do you guys say? We all raise our glasses and toast to Ed,
thank you,
and to cult movies.
Time for listener shout out.
Cult shout outs.
This goes out to Frank Lucchese Soto from Chicago, who's a huge film buff and film historian.
Yeah, he's great.
Cool.
A Rottweiler lover, a grindhouse film lover. He loves to talk politics. And Frank wrote, "Hey, Monster Party, please get Ed Grant back on the show. Another cult film episode."
Nice. What timing?
Wow.
Are you happy
to see the
now?
future.
Happy?
Frank, I promise you we are working on that. So
nice.
And Larry, I think you have a couple.
Well, it's so funny. I've been working on this film project for a while, and as I'm working, I have my little flyers of Monster Party out on my desk. And, over the course of the day, people have asked me, "Hey, what's this Monster Party about?" So I would tell these people who are working with me, and I've been getting great feedback from them because they've been listening to the show. So I just want to thank Mark, Sheila, and Dan, 3 of the people who've been listening and actually have commented about how much they've enjoyed it. Dan was raving about our "So You Want to Have Your Own Movie Studio" episode. He said he was just dying. He was just dying. That was one with Scott Thompson, who was it was fabulous. We got into some great arguments. But guys, thanks for listening, and enjoy the other 200 and something episodes that we have. It's great stuff.
And make sure you bring Larry egg salad sandwiches for lunch because he loves that egg salad.
He loves them. He loves them.
No, it's the most buckets.
Make them like Big Macs.
On this project, there will be no egg salad.
I can't even. Wow.
Yes.
And not even the Japanese egg salad.
No. God,
wow.
No. Okay.
Say that for an egg salad episode.
Well, let's also remind our listeners that Monster Party merch is still available on our eBay store in limited quantities and limited sizes.
Large.
Exclusive,
large.
Limited.
Yeah, now they're limited edition.
Exclusives. That's
Maybe I should number them.
They're rare. They're rare now.
Maybe the Franklin Mint can somehow certify them.
Yeah.
Whoever they are.
Glow-in-the-dark classic Monster Party logo t-shirt is still available in large size.
Yes.
And the classic Monster Party logo PPE cloth mask is still available. And now that mask restrictions are being lifted in many areas,
be the last one on your block.
Well, hey, those things could get super rare now.
Yeah.
Well, look.
Now it's like a retro thing. Yeah. Mask,
another thing is, let's say you have that cold or something and you don't want to spread it around. Sure. You can put on a Monster Party mask. Yeah. So I think it's still worth it to get one.
You could kind of fold it in half and make it like a little tiny purse.
Yeah. Ooh.
Put a little brush and some certs.
Customized.
Borders.
Yeah.
Go to the 5 and dime. Have the time of your life.
Shipping is always free. And if you happen to be a Monster Party Patreon member, we will throw in extra goodies.
Like what?
Courtesy, fun stuff from Biff Bang Pow Toys, our friend Jason Lindsay, and creature creator extraordinaire Ted Haynes has given us some very, very cool and exciting stuff.
Those are two wonderful people.
Yes, indeed. Right. Friends of the show. We appreciate. So, Matt, what can you tell us about this Patreon thing?
Well, Patreon is a platform that if you sign up, what you will get is access to bonus material that Monster Party has created. Now, this could come in the form of a special audio episode or one of our Monster Party shows like Larry's Toy Time.
Larry's Toy Time.
A great show, Monster Party Masterpieces, where you get to see the early film work of the guys. And, we've been doing this. It's been a series, a saga, if you will, of our trip to Japan. And so we have this episode that we put together on YouTube that has footage that's cut down. This is the raw footage.
Raw.
So
as if you were there.
It's like you were there. And you're living it with us. And you'll feel the hangover.
You'll feel like you're actually traveling with us.
Yeah, your back will ache from the capsule hotel.
Your feet will be sore from doing so much walking.
Your wallets will be dry from all the toys you're buying.
Yes.
Although I do like a dry wallet, generally.
Well, Matt,
I guess I should say.
It sounds fantastic, but it also sounds rather expensive, no?
No, James, it's only $5.
What? Wait a minute. Wait, you can't get an illegal copy of Thundercrack for that amount.
No,
You can't even get a gallon of gas for that anymore.
True.
Wow. Way to make it real. You were having fun with the Thundercrack and you had to bring the world in. Thanks, James.
Man, what a letdown.
Oh God. Wow. Who called in Sad Sack?
You have to watch heartbeeps to get your
to feel clean again.
Better.
Now that you can get for, I'm saying free.
You can get for less than $5.
You can get heartbeats probably on DVD for.
I'm sure in the Target
$2.
Yeah,
and then you can get coffee maybe.
Yeah,
but Patreon for Monster Party is only $5.
$5
a month.
That is a bargain.
Yeah. And so to join, all you got to do is you go to patreon.com, you go to Monster Party, click the join button, follow the instructions, and wow. I mean, it's like the rays of heaven shining down on you, opening up a grassy field of life. And I'm going to stop now.
And let's remind our listeners that you can find us on Facebook and YouTube at Monster Party TV, on Twitter at Monster Party HQ. Instagram is also Monster Party HQ. And hey, whatever platform you're listening to us on, please take a moment and write us a review because we would love to hear your thoughts and we will read it on the air.
Through our Thundercrack. We're such children.
Beyond Thundercrack.
Yeah.
On that note, I am Matt Weinhold.
I'm Shawn Sheridan.
I'm Larry Stroth.
And I'm James Gonis.
Keep America strong!
And keep seeking out those cult films.
And keep listening to Monster Party. It's the best podcast out there.
That's adequate.
Ed, do you have a mustache?
I always said I had a mustache last time. It may not have been apparent, but yes, I've had it for like 3 or 4 years. Hey, you're looking good, Jim. Jeez, hey. I remember Jim kept doing the buffering. You kept buffering last time visually.
He's a buffer.
He's
a mother buffer.
Yes. Oh. So this is the size of a tablet. A friend gave me a used laptop from a few years ago, and it's the best of the video transmissions. But I'm looking, so I'm not going to make eye line glance. Last time I was able to look at you guys. This time I may be glancing up here because I have a big monitor up here. So that's the way I can see you, so you don't look like a little midget, little tiny postage stamp. So,
that's fine.
There you go. So that explains
man, we'll work with you. Whatever.
And if I go to the gents' room while somebody's talking, please don't take it as an insult. I might just have to, take an adjournment. I'm getting older.
We'll talk amongst ourselves.
Hey, buddy, just to let you know, just to let you know, if you feel that urge coming, all you got to go say, guys, can I take a pee break? And we'll all do it because we're all there.
We can all use that.
I've decided to record from my restroom. So
that's with the action figures.
I did it all up. It's a studio / John.
I was saying to Jim in the notes that it was great to learn that you were a KISS Army. Like, I think your listeners, are hearing, like, when we do these episodes where you don't talk just about the regular stuff, I think they end up learning about you guys as hosts and everything. Like,
that's true.
Your KISS obsession. I
am obsessed with KISS. Yes.
I did. No, that was great. I'm a listener. I'm a regular listener, I have to confess. But so it is interesting to find out, like, what your former, what are your other obsessions besides monster movies and stuff.
Well, they're coming.
That's kind of cool. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. Let's see if I can turn.
I've got a little bit of a weird sort of theme, maybe, on this one.
Oh, okay, cool.
I sort of do too.
Me 3
for a couple films.
Wow.
For like 2 or 3 films.
Now, Ed. Is that a FM Famous Monsters number 2?
Yes, that's I just put that up in honor of you guys. Yes, because that's a British copy. I got a guy who was selling the British copies, so I could actually afford. It was like about $50 or something. And
no way!
Missing pages. Well, it's missing what they did for Britain.
See, I was waiting.
It's not someone. It's not that someone tore it out. You know what it is? It's that they gave up on them. There was a story that was about horror movie hosts like Goulardi, Vampira, and they took that out for the British audience. So it's missing, like, it's actually bound. It's not missing pages, but what it is it's missing American articles. They took out like 2 or 3 American articles because you see it says they're what is that? That would £2.6? That can't be £2. Whatever.
And did they replace it with anything British? Like,
no, they would just make it. Then they had a thinner magazine.
Bangers and mash recipe,
the funniest thing is they still give the address. They give a British address, and then they give the Philadelphia. The Pennsylvania. No, they say here was it Camberwell Grove, London, Gracie Muse. But they also had somewhere in here because they just kept reprinting. That was my big. I spent like some of the lockdown collecting the early Famous Monsters I didn't have. I didn't know the big secret is there's thousands of reprinted articles, and a lot of it wasn't new for like issue upon issue. Yeah, you buy a whole run of it. They ran like one King Kong article maybe 5 times. It was ridiculous. I kept buying it, not realizing, and then I said, "Oh shit, I might as well complete the collection." So I kept going. But yeah,
actually, I don't think the guys know this, but the one time I was at the Acker Mansion was with Ed.
Yes.
We went when Ed was here in town.
Yes. And he did the thing for Jim that he did for women. He had a thing which was because I saw him do it on public access with a girl. He had a thing where he'd speak to you in Esperanto and he'd say, "You have such bewildering eyes," or "You have such lovely eyes." He had a thing that was meant for like a couple, and he did it to Jim. And then later on, I found out what he was saying. Or he said to us, like, "That's a compliment to people." And then I saw him do it on public access in New York with a man and a woman. So he gave you the girl's greeting. So
Wow,
it was kind of weird.
He let us into
hey, James, did he go full Octoman on you?
Oh, you mean touching? Touching? No,
but wait, whoa,
he did let us into his bedroom.
Yes, the Marlene Dietrich room. I don't know if did you guys ever see that?
The Marlene Dietrich room. Yeah, and he had autographed Playboy headshots.
Right.
Yeah, I was like, wow, it's Janet Lupo. That's cool.
Yeah. He had like this scrapbook. And did he show us the scrapbook or he just told us about it? I think he showed it to us but didn't open it, in which he said he gave it to her at the studio when she was doing like fucking Blonde Venus or something. And she signed every page not knowing. And it took her a while. And he wondered, why did Ms. Dietrich not give it back to me? And then he told us the story that it was basically not given back to him for a week because Dietrich signed each page. So he said he had that. I don't know, did that get auctioned? Like, who got the Dietrich scrapbook that's signed on every single page?
Unless he made that because she was an idiot. That's why.
Well, she was new to America. What the hell? But yeah, he had her
need
shoes.
to sign every page.
He had her shoes on his.
Wow, you had Dietrich too.
Yes,
James Mason and Dietrich.
It was a little strange. It was a little weird.
No, look. Sure. There's a bunch of us out there who like feet or shoes, I know.
I know. Shoes. Go ahead, Larry. I like where this is going.
It's so funny. This is kind of
got
off
like
topic.
Hobbit fan fiction or slash fiction.
No, this is kind of off topic, and we can wait for Sean. But it's there's a 50s actress who I just love. I think she's stunning. And when I first saw her in Anne Francis in Forbidden Planet, oh my God, she's so beautiful. Yeah. But there are these photos of her where she's modeling off the clothes at the MGM studio. What they do is they put on an outfit and they just take a photo of you, and they have like a little thing that says what your character is and the outfit. And they don't want you to smile. They just want you to stand there, just look straight in the camera, no expression stuff. And then she's turning in a certain way. And I looked at her feet and her feet seem huge. They're massive. And then I thought, that's
what they say about big feet.
For women,
please.
No. It's like when she's wearing the high heels, she has a lot of foot to go into that heel thing. But
I'll take every inch.
But when they're just like
I'd
flat,
suck a corn right off her.
It's funny because when I saw her,
yeah, you heard me, Ed.
Yeah, if you put this on the tape, everybody will learn something. This would be interesting.
Oh, this all goes on.
Yes. Wow. Yeah. My God.
This is what we call our bonus features. So if you're okay with us putting
it's kind of like, you meet that pretty girl and she's very attractive, and then she's got the man hands, or, when you look at her, she's got beautiful body, but she's got like, Bigfoot feet, something like that. But,
and you know what? I have pretty lady hands. Look at those.
Wow.
Ooh,
I never thought of you as having lady hands.
They're gorgeous. If there was such a thing as a deformed hand model. Because my hands are beautiful, but they've seen some action.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
They've got 1,000-yard stare at this point.
There is a wiki, there is a wiki that's called Wiki Feet. There's other ones for other parts of the body, I believe, too. And you can look up like everybody from Esther Williams to God knows who, just pick a celebrity. And it has men too, for all the guys and the ladies who want to see men. So it's like very, very, because I found it when I was looking up somebody to steal images from my blog. And then I'm like, Wiki Feet. Look at well, this is interesting, because it's like anytime they wore sandals at a red carpet thing, and it's very, very, very it goes on and on and on. Yeah, if it's a famous person, they'll have like Angelina Jolie would have like, I don't know, 1,000 entries or something. And then even the Scream Queen, sometimes they have like what their real name was. Like if there's wrestler women, they'll have their real name as opposed to China or whatever her fake name was, Moolah or something, And they have people you don't want to see too. It's that same, it's like that Paul Newman joke about the player. You get to see the breasts of the lady you don't want to see, and you don't see the breasts of the one you do want to see. That's what he told Robert Altman. It's a very sexist line, but he said about Greta Scacchi never gets topless, and she had a reputation for getting topless in every movie, and she doesn't in The Player, but Cynthia Stevenson does, so I thought it was adorable. But he said, Paul Newman supposedly said to Altman as he left a screening, we got to see the tits of the girl we didn't want to see, and then we didn't see the ones of the we didn't want. Very sexist, but it's
sexist. But I have to say this, and this is not sexist, is that anytime any woman shows her breasts in a movie, bravo. You know what? I don't care. It's always welcome.
It's interesting. I talk about this on the show a lot. American movies today, because nobody wants to be accused of being inappropriate. The male gaze. I actually had one of the movies. I don't know if we're going to get to it, but one of them is a male gaze movie, and it is. I mean, it just is. A lot of the movies that are sexist sometimes are about sexism. Like a great example is Carnal Knowledge. I had a feminist lady tell me that's a sexist movie, and I said, no, that's a movie about a sexist and how he's an idiot, and Nicholson's character. But there's that whole world of cinema where now they say they don't. So basically, if you're in a European film, you'll still see nudity. I heartily recommend, in the regard of craziness, Paul Verhoeven's Benedetta, because I'm an ex-Catholic. That movie had insanity, lesbian nuns taking, it literally was Ken Russell's The Devil, but with no subtlety. Ken Russell.
I was just about to say that.
It's actually in that case, Uncle Ken, as he would like to be known, was more subtle than Verhoeven. There's a girl who comes in with a little Virgin Mary statuette, and I, being the perv I am, I'm watching it and going, is that going to be used as a sex toy? I had to wait about 45 minutes, but then this woman's whittling it. You see her whittling it, and she keeps the Virgin on one end, and she does a big cock on the other end, and she's putting it in herself. And it was like, well, this is the kind of movie they used to make. Like, this used to be made on a regular basis.
Sure, right. It was considered art.
Yeah. And even in that Maverick period, you'd see all this nudity. I mean, Robert Altman or someone. There's this scene that Sissy Spacek, who never did nudity, she's nude in Alan Rudolph's Welcome to L.A. just casually. She's on the phone. So there would be casual. Oh, I just saw, what was it? A Married Woman with Jill Clayburgh, who really didn't do nudity. She's walking to the bed talking to Michael Murphy, her husband, and she's saying, and it really isn't a bad thing. It's not they were male directors. So by today's standards, it would be the male gaze, but it was that they were casual, that they were at home and they're doing this kind of stuff. And it wasn't really piggy, it wasn't kind of like, let's salivate over the woman.
It was 70s mores. The body is nothing to be ashamed of, and it's casual.
And
I don't think it was an accident, though.
Oh, I'm sure that he was sort of.
I don't think it was like, hey, look, if you want to do this scene with clothes or without, it doesn't matter to us. You just choose.
They probably.
I don't think that was the case.
Remember the poster? She's in her underwear.
Yes, she is. You're right. You're right. The poster on that she's sitting on the worst. What's funny is when I saw that on TV, because I saw it within the theater and the TV in about 2 weeks when I first saw it. Same thing with Looking for Mr. Goodbar. If I'm not mistaken, because I haven't seen the theatrical in years, it's on YouTube. I believe Diane Keaton, that's the only film she did do toplessness. She was known. She was the one cast member of Hair who never took her clothes off. But she's in the movie. But then they showed it on TV and she's wearing a t-shirt. Same scene. So I have the feeling they shot the scenes twice.
Oh,
so like that casual scene with Michael Murphy and Jill Clayburgh is in the TV cut because it's important to show that they were a happy couple. Then they get divorced. It had to be left in the movie. So they must have, Mazzarti said, put on your shirt. We'll shoot it again for TV.
Okay.
They used to have all these TV cuts of movies that would have other scenes that were the scenes you'd seen in, not like Taxi Driver. I don't know why have they never put the Taxi Driver? I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but the TV cut of Taxi Driver has scenes that have never shown up on the subsequent Blu-rays and DVDs.
That happens a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. There's all these weird scenes. It's one where he's actually asked to give the gun. And then he says, I don't have a gun. And when he's visiting, what's her name, Jodie Foster for the first time. And the guy goes, no, you do. I see it in your pocket. There's also Andy Boy gives him, do you want a license for these guns? He offers him more things in the room.
Okay.
They're very little minor things, but I'm like, I guess because Scorsese knew they were going to cut the whole sequence where we should see all the blood. And when they showed it locally here in New York in the syndicated movie to make it 2 hours, they would cut Albert Brooks entirely. He didn't have a part. It was just basically Sybil Shepherd worked in an office. And you saw a guy and they just cut all of Albert's moments. So Albert had no role at all. It
sounds like my career.
They decided we don't need it. So it's kind of sad, But that's that weird. They don't put those on. Sometimes they do for some DVDs, but not all. Hello, Sean. Hey,
Sean.
Ed. How are
you? Hey, you know what's funny is that when I saw the first time on television, I saw Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Oh God,
they put so much extra stuff in that to the point where they actually used a shot that wasn't finished.
Oh,
like there were rafters.
Yes. I remember that.
That movie in general was up to the last second. I think it was a Christmas release, and they were like hard line. They had to do a Christmas release. It was rushed. A lot of the effects. Yeah.
Wow.
That's true.
But that's crazy, and it was cool for me. But it's like, hey, it's a little peek backstage.
I like seeing some of the stuff you've never seen, even like remember like Earthquake when they released it on TV. They filmed all these extra scenes of people like in an airplane who couldn't land because of the earthquake and
Deborah Lee Scott.
But most important was the Hammer films back in some of the Hammer films in the 60s had extra stuff shot for television.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which you don't see a lot of.
There's also what is the movie? Oh, Dune. When Dune was shown, the David Lynch with the extra 2 hours or 3 hours by Mr. Hyatt or whatever it was, they had to explain. They got rid of Virginia Madsen's opening, which never made any sense anyway. And instead, they had a narrator deliver something while we looked at what looked like costume tests. It was like somebody standing there, like I don't know, Sting is standing there and he's staring just openly, and it looked like they had nothing on them, and it looked like it might have been a makeup or a costume test that they just put there because they needed a new image of that character. And then they explained that, and it still made no sense to me because I never read the book. So the movie is just like incomprehensible. So,
well, I didn't mind the introduction of the little princess going, oh, and by the way, the place.
I liked it. Okay, yeah,
I like it. Virginia Madsen actually.
I love her, but didn't mind. And look, call me old fashioned, sir. But when that film came out, that's what they say, Larry, old fashioned.
Tom Snyder checking in here.
Okay, no. But really, when I saw that film, I had read the book and I didn't know what to expect, and I just thought it was cool and weird and funky and design. I mean, I liked it. And the funny thing, Ed, is this new Dune. I saw that and. I mean, I liked it just as much. I thought it was beautiful.
It's great,
And they actually
did a good job, actually.
Yeah, and it was the care they took into. And the bummer is, it's like with this director, they're really giving him the time and the money and to do it the way he wants to. Yeah, David Lynch did a lot of really cool things, but again, the studio. I mean, he took his name off it, the film, because
Mr. Hyde or something.
Yeah. It's really a shame. You kind of wonder if they had been David, I know you're a weird guy, but we're going to be behind you 100%. If you got to make this into 2 films, we're behind you, but no, they were just.
I mean, I go back and forth because On some days, I think, well, it's kind of mismatched the director to the project, but there's so much great stuff in the movie.
Because of that, it becomes its own weird thing,
right.
Which I like. I mean, there's no movie like that.
It's a better movie, absolutely, than David Lynch ever gives it credit for.
I agree.
I agree.
And wouldn't you consider that, Matt, a cult film, if you will?
That would be a cult film.
Yes.
That's interesting with Tenpole Tudor. I was always wondering what the hell happened to that guy. He shows up in that Jeffrey Rush movie about Peter Sellers as Spike Milligan, because I'm a big Goon Show fan. And I was like, who the hell? Yeah, who the hell played Spike Milligan? And I'm like, that's that guy. His name is something Edward Tudor. He has a very official. I mean, he's very British. And then I remember that's the crazy guy from that movie, The Great Rock and Roll.
Did you like that film? Did you like that film, Ed?
No, it didn't.
I felt like Jeffrey Rush. It's kind of like, hey, you know what? I love John Wayne, and it's my dream to always play John Wayne. So I'm up there and I'm doing my John Wayne impersonation. It's like, really? That's your Peter Sellers? And look, he's a talented actor, but
it didn't really have much to say about Sellers' emptiness, because the whole movie is about it's like what's his name? Scorsese was going to make a movie about Nick Tosches' book about Dino. The whole point about Nick Tosches' book is that Dino wasn't there. He was an entertainer. When he was off stage, he really wasn't there for his family and relatives. And so how do you make a movie about a guy who wasn't really there, who didn't really commit to anyone, et cetera? So I
have problems with that book though too, because there's a lot of
we took a lot of liberties, but I like his style. I'm a big fan of his style, so I sort of enjoy.
It's an entertaining read, but there's a lot of these. He's making a lot of assumptions about like what's going on in someone's head,
right?
Which I don't necessarily think was there.
Right.
So Ed, just out of curiosity.
Sure.
So you have FM number 2. Are you saying, do you have all FMs from number 1?
I think I finally got each and every one of them.
Really?
Yeah, because some of them are reprints, but the two that were reprints with the 4 and 6, because they really are impossible to get. So I have those as the reprints, and I have a torn copy, like the front copy, but it's another British one. So the first one is another British one where they decided let's remove 2 or 3 articles, and then the guy was willing to sell them for like lower than 50 because they were a little hurt. That one's really hurt. This one's in pretty good condition, but
you know what's
the thing was the big secret is the reruns. There's actually a Robert Bloch article where he gets something drastically wrong. I don't know if any of you guys read this, but at one point he tells you the 10 scariest scenes I ever saw, because he says most movies nowadays in the 60s aren't horror. They're shock. They're trying to revolt you. And he loves a scene, and he describes a scene where a little girl gets killed. It's a famous scene from an early 40s low-budget RKO movie where a little girl is sent out by her mother to get the groceries, and she bangs on the door. No, the leopard's getting me, blah, blah, blah. He describes it as being a scene from the Cat People. It's actually a scene from the Leopard Man. Yeah. He gets it completely wrong, and every time they republished it, they'd get letters, because they would constantly, James Warren was so cheap, they republished that thing about 3 or 4 times. And the thing was, he would get annoyed, so Robert Bloch would have them. He told Fari, let me include a letter to the editor in the following issue saying, yes, I'm aware that I got it wrong back in 63, but you just read it in an issue from 72, 74, because they were shameless in their reprinting, and they didn't update anything, even if something was wrong, or even if they said there will be a sequel, there will be a 6th, I'm making one up, there will be a 6th Planet of the Apes movie, and there never was, they'd leave that in. And it was just it's really shoddy.
The other Warren magazines, like Creepy and Eerie, they would recycle stories all the time.
Right. Jesus, that's unbelievable. So I should have said more about Blier not being sexist, because that was the whole argument I made in my TV show, was that he's considered sexist, but that if you look at it, the women are numb and the men are morons, and they acknowledge that. So he was also making a proto-feminist comment on sexism and stuff. So that's, blah, blah, blah. So I always feel hey, you didn't specify that enough. I'll watch my own show and say, geez, you didn't clarify that enough. But that's being a perfectionist.
This is worth mentioning only because, Ed, you call me Jim.
Yeah.
And I was Jim.
Yeah, for years.
What made me James was when I started on day 1 at Playboy as a temp, and I had a cubicle, and the guy in the office next to me was named Jim Nagel. Okay. And because there was a Jim and I was just a temp, they made me James.
Yes.
And since then, that stuck. If it wasn't for that little fact, everybody would be calling me Jim Gonis.
Yeah, everybody in New York calls you Jim. Yeah,
but Jim.
Oh, you're
Jim, let me ask you a
James
question.
I know.
Yeah, James has class.
It does.
It just stuck. You know me as James, and now you can't, separate it.
Would you prefer it though if we called you Jim?
No,
not now.
It's too late now.
That would be weird.
That would be weird. Yeah.
James is sophisticated. I mean,
but if it wasn't for this trivial fact of this guy at Playboy who happened to be named Jim, I would have been Jim.
I thought Heartbeeps was going to enter that scene.
That's funny. Now I want to watch it again because
I honestly was just like, because
it was well promoted too, and it was like they put a lot behind it.
Sean, I remember that.
I thought there might be a resurgence.
Yeah,
and that's why I put it on this list because I thought maybe that everybody had reassessed it and went, it's actually pretty funny.
Even the title is diminutive. Like Heart Beeps. I'm not going to see a movie called Heart Beeps. It's not going to happen.
Whereas, like just recently, last week, I think, Gene and I watched The Incredible Shrinking Woman, which holds up pretty well. I mean, it's silly, but it's a great vehicle for Lily Tomlin, and it has a great cast.
Than it did then.
Yeah, exactly. I enjoyed it more now.
Yeah,
but yeah.